Internal Audit, County Assembly.
My name is Helen Cherop, Committee Clerk, PAC, UASIN GISHU.
Excellent. So the clerk to the county assemblies here is a clerk of all clerks, so he needs to go on record.
My name is Shadrach Choge, clerk to county assembly.
Very well. Let's move to the executive. Governor, first of all, we appreciate your hospitality and your welcome to this county. But now let's get to the real business. You can introduce yourself, go on record, and let the members of your delegation also go on record. At a later time, I will give you an opportunity to make opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My name is Jackson Mandago, Governor of UASIN GISHU County. And I have my team that is supporting me. I think it will be good for them to introduce themselves.
I'm Daniel Kiprot Chemno, Deputy Governor of UASIN GISHU.
I'm CPA Julius Ruto, CC member in charge of Finance and Economic Planning.
Chairman, my name is Peter Jesus, the Chief Officer for Finance.
I'm Silas Rono, Principal Accountant, UASIN GISHU County Executive.
I'm Mary Kiarie, Internal Audit.
Chairman, my name is Esther Mutai, CC Member for Cooperatives and Enterprise Development.
Chairman, my name is Dr. John Cheriot, Acting Chief Officer, Health Services.
My name is Evelyn Rotich, CC Health.
My name is Mary Njogu, the CC in charge of Environment, Water, Natural Resources, Tourism and Wildlife Management.
Chairman, my name is Simon Keme, the Chief Officer in charge of Water, Environment, Natural Resources, Tourism and Wildlife Management.
Chairman, my name is Bob Basungu, Director Water. Thank you.
Chairman, my name is Jackton Kiprop, Acting CEO, Fiscal Planning and Urban Development.
Chairman, my name is Isaac Lagat, the Acting CEO, Cooperatives and Enterprise Development.
Chairman, I'm Dr. Philip Biama, Veterinary Service Director.
Chairman, I'm Dr. Victoria Tarus, Chief Officer, Livestock, Fisheries and Agriculture.
Chairman, my name is Roslyn Koskei, Acting CEO, Education, Culture and Social Services.
Chairman, I'm Joseph Kurgat, CC in charge of Education, Culture, Sports and Youth Affairs.
Honorable Chair, my name is Henry Mkolwe, the Acting Chief Officer for Youth and Sports Development.
Any other member of the delegation who has not gone on record?
David Rogon, Chief Accountant, UASIN GISHU County.
I also want to acknowledge the two members of County Assembly who have walked in. Honorable members, could you introduce yourselves and go on record?
I am Hilary Rono, member of County Assembly, friend of the committee.
Honorable Chair, I'm Honorable Julia Sang, member of County Assembly, Public Investments Committee.
And another member has just walked in. We'll give him an opportunity at a later time to, may you introduce yourself before we declare you a stranger? Thank you very much, Honorable Josephat Lawoi, the leader of majority UASIN GISHU County. Thank you. We also acknowledge the presence of the Fourth Estate, the media, that has done an excellent job in covering the Senate sittings in UASIN GISHU. I am informed that at least two of the media houses, K24 and KBC, shall be airing these proceedings live. And I think Citizen might also be airing extracts of that. I also want to acknowledge all the members of the public who are in the gallery up there. This is a public hearing, and so nothing will be done in secrecy. Before we get into very detailed issues, we will move to the next order, which is administration of oath. Governor, the clerk shall lead you in the administration of oath.
I, Jackson Kiplagat Mandago, do solemnly swear that the evidence that I shall give before this committee in respect of the matters before the committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you, Governor and Clerk, for doing that very efficiently. Now we want to move to the next segment, which is a presentation of documents before the committee. And I see the chair of the Public Accounts Committee of the County Assembly has just walked in. We acknowledge your presence. Could you introduce yourself? Go on record. Just say your name and don't go into unnecessary details like marital status.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ramadan Ali, MCA for Kiplombe Ward, and the chair PAC was in GISHU County. Thank you.
You are welcome. So could we now receive or table the documents, the written response from the county government of UASIN GISHU and any supporting evidences?
Mr. Chairman, I wish to table the responses for the audit queries of financial year 2014-2015 and the supporting documents therein here presented.
Thank you, Governor. Well received. So, Clerk, let's just make sure members have copies of what has been tabled. Is it the same as what we have? Members, could you confirm that you have a copy of the Governor's response to issues raised? Senator Amatangi, are you okay?
Yes, Chair. I have the, save for what has just been tabled, Chair, those are the responses, the supporting documents. We have the rest. Thank you.
Okay, so I hope there are adequate copies of the supporting evidence so that when we need to refer to them, members can have them. In fact, if it were possible, you could just distribute them. It looks like a truckload of documents. Governor?
It's not a truckload of documents, but documents suffice to answer these audit queries.
Which equals a truckload. But now that you have tabled them, we shall accept them. Clerks and Sergeant-at-Arms, you can help in distribution of the documents to members. I also want to confirm from the Office of the Auditor General that the documents that are before us have been shared with you previously. Because the job of this committee is not to do an audit. It is the Auditor General who does the audit.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the documents before the committee were delivered to our office yesterday, but we reviewed them in addition to the documents which had been earlier submitted to us. Thank you.
Did you just say the documents were submitted to you yesterday?
Yes, Chair.
Governor, could you confirm that the Auditor General received these documents yesterday?
Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General received additional documents because we had already made a presentation of other documents initially.
I think we need to be very clear on that because our letter of invitation indicated that you are to provide written responses and all supporting documents to the specific issues raised in the Auditor General's report at least 7 days prior to the scheduled date of appearance. And it is not really in vain that we do that, but it allows the Auditor General to review his report and make us more efficient because he might find evidence that the issues he raised have been cleared. So it is to your benefit. Otherwise, we'll have to go through the 25 issues one by one. So you are saying only additional documents were provided yesterday?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We had already appeared before this committee initially, and we had made submission of documents. And following the previous appearances, we then resubmitted the documents plus additional documents. But otherwise, the Auditor General had already received these documents earlier.
Yeah.
Senator Omanga?
Chair, this audit report for 2014-2015, if additional documents were submitted yesterday, what happens to even the current audit issues? There's a lot of delay in submission of these documents, and it's happening around across the counties. I think as a committee, we need to do something about it.
I hear you, Senator Omanga. I'm also concerned because if you're going to be seeing fresh documents today, then it's going to make our work very difficult. Governor, you've stated that you appeared before this committee on 2014-2015. Was that the Senate committee or that was a county public accounts committee?
So the Senate committee, Mr. Chairman.
On 2014?
In fact, we appeared twice.
Yes.
And in the second time, there was no quorum of the committee at the Senate.
Which you can see today, we have more than enough quorum and we have more than enough time to deal with these issues for the benefit of the people of UASIN GISHU.
And that is why, Chair, we have made sure that we have submitted all documents so that this matter can be dispensed of.
Senator Lakina?
Chair, Governor, could you just tell us, you said you submitted additional documents. Why were these documents not submitted when you appeared before the Senate?
Honorable Senator, when we appeared before the Senate and we made some of the presentations, we were asked to attach additional evidences for some of the responses we had given. Those are the documents that we've just included, and I believe the Office of the Auditor General can really clarify the additional information that we have just given them.
Auditor General, could you confirm what the Governor stated?
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the documents you have submitted were additions to the previously submitted documents. But I can also confirm that we didn't really have enough time to go through them because there are many. Thank you.
Chair.
Senator Kibiru.
Thank you, Chair. I think like my colleague have said, Governor, it's good that true, you have done a good job. You are here, you are with a big team, and you have provided extra documents. But as you realize, and this is something that is in the public knowledge, we are dealing with very old issues. And we keep on saying the committee also gets tired when it becomes morticians. You know, we should be dealing with 2017, 2018, or 2016, 2017, Bwana Governor. But when you give the documents a day before the meeting, honestly, you are putting this committee in a very precarious position because we may not be able to peruse them and be able to make good use of the time that we would be here. I think, Chairman, that is something that we have discussed before, and we need to tell the Governor that as much as he has done that, that makes us a bit uncomfortable because we may not be able to utilize our time well with the documents being presented this morning. Thank you.
Senator Matangi.
Chair, just for neat housekeeping, and I believe probably from what the Governor says, I think I would not want to allude to probably misinformation on his part, but update probably, because it is important, Chair, that we state clearly for the Governor's understanding that yes, after appearance, Chair, to this committee, any subsequent documents which the committee then requires to be submitted after that. And given the fact that the committee also gives notice to another meeting after that, it is within that period when you receive the notice that those documents should be submitted 7 days prior to the notice of that, to the date of that meeting under notice. So
Governor, though having presented the documents correctly earlier and having appeared, those additional documents should have been presented 7 days prior. But Chair, as you earlier said, then what that just means is that then we'll have to literally go through every issue with a tooth comb, and maybe at the expense of being very efficient. But if the auditor confirms, Chair, that he's able to tackle it, then so are we.
I've taken note of the comments of the senators. The rules of the game should be known ahead of the game, not during the game. And in Senate, we are having this conversation that we need to come up with county public audit procedures or regulations, so that, Governor, when you're appearing before us, you know exactly what is expected of you before the game, not during the game. And this is something that must happen even at the county assembly level. The county assembly, the procedures and regulations relating to audit and scrutiny of the Auditor General's report must be known. When your CCs appear before the county assembly, they know what is expected of them and the timelines. And when the governor appears before the Senate, he knows what is expected of him and the timelines. I think that is a gap. But you must take seriously the comments that members have made, because we want to be very efficient. We don't want to be dealing with, we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish by dealing with small things at the expense of bigger things. And that's the importance of bringing these documents to us early.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think going forward, we shall endeavor as a county to make sure that those documents are submitted on time. And let me also say, Honorable Senator Gabiru from Kirinyaga, that really the intention of this county is not to make the Senate committee spend a lot of time. And Chairman, without looking like I'm bashing the committee, that is also important that this committee will always have quorum, so that when we come, we're able to dispense. We have been in Nairobi twice, and the committee didn't have the quorum.
I want to acknowledge the presence of another member of the committee, because we want to deal with this devil of quorum. I want to confirm to you how over quorum we are. Professor.
Professor Sam K. Ongeri, Senator Kisii County, good morning.
You're welcome, Professor. Governor, the ghosts of quorum are ghosts of the past. So just lay them to rest. Don't revive them again. I want us to move on. Senator Olekina, maybe final comment on this.
Yeah, Chair. This issue of documents, Governor, is something which is very important. And I'm happy that you've come with your entire team, which I would hope has got the capacity, understands the consequences under the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act, and I'll refer you to Section 19. And number two, we also have the PFM Act and also the Constitution. Because if you do not provide the documents when they are required, then of course we'll not be able to do our job. And in fact, under the our Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act, we could penalize you for not having done that. We have done that for other governors. So this should not be taken as if it's something light. It's something which is very serious. And I think because you have your entire team here, that should not go really undealt with. So, Governor, that is something that you must take very seriously.
Thank you, Senator, for that emphasis. I'll make a ruling that members, let us attempt to proceed. We are here in UASIN GISHU. It would only be fair for us to proceed and prosecute the issues that were raised by the Auditor General. The clerk of the County Assembly, could you confirm to us that the County Assembly Public Accounts Committee report for this year has been tabled and adopted?
Honorable Chair, I confirm.
We didn't make an explicit requirement, but it would have been very good for you to table before the Senate the adopted report of the County Assembly, I'm sure you, is it something that you can do in the course of these proceedings? It would be very useful for us as a committee just to see what the County Assembly had recommended. I have, clerk, the copy that I have before me, was this formally obtained from the County Assembly? Or this was not formally obtained. So clerk and the chair of the Public Accounts Committee of UASIN GISHU County, could you please attempt to get us a copy of the adopted report? We don't want to repeat the things that the County Assembly has already interrogated. We would like Senate to take a different perspective to the issues that were raised by the Auditor General. So as a clerk does that, I want to acknowledge the presence of my vice chair. Please go on record.
My name is Senator Mithika Linturi from the great county of Meru, the vice chairman of this committee. Chair, I apologize for getting here a bit late, but I am ready to take up my responsibilities.
Karibu, Vice Chair. Senator Linturi is also the Vice Chair of the Legal Committee, so I know that he has got a lot of cross-cutting engagements. Senator Matangi is Chair of the Roads Committee, which will be doing a meeting at about 11 o'clock. And all these senators are involved in various other committees. Therefore, Governor, do we agree that we attempt to proceed up to 11, or we can go on until the cows come back home?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy if we proceed until we dispense all the matters in the report.
Great. Thank you. I will make some very brief comments just to start off. First of all, Governor, we acknowledge that your team, your executive, looks like you have already achieved the constitutional gender balance. I think a government where men and women are working together is a government that then becomes considerate to the needs, to the real needs of the people. So we acknowledge that. We have seen counties come before us, and it is a men affair. And we like the fact that your cabinet has got that mix. What we are doing is a constitutional mandate. As a second-term governor, you are aware of the discussions that happened in the term of the last Senate between the COG and Senate on the role of Senate in audit and consideration of the Auditor General's report and in execution of its oversight role. There are still a lot of gray areas. One of the reasons to the Senate legislators, I believe it is our duty to come up with proper procedures that will draw the line between what the County Assembly does and what the Senate does. Going forward, we have discussed with the Auditor General the duties and the functions that have been assigned to you in the 4th schedule of the Constitution. We want to know, when it comes to agriculture, what are your indicators and what are your investments? And what are the outputs and what are the outcomes? When it comes to roads, are you building more roads or money is going in and there is no outcome? When it comes to ECD, when it comes to youth and social affairs, I see you have a very youthful CEC crest was surrendered. Whether bank reconciliations were done, those must be done at the County Assembly level. And I'm glad that the chair of the Public Accounts Committee is here, the majority leader is here. It is our belief and determination that they have those powers. Our powers is to divide revenue, to allocate revenue, and to oversight, and to legislate. So please, members of County Assembly, seize the moment and seize your powers. Exercise it. Powers of the Senate has consequently agreed to appear before the Senate. And in fact, Governor Oparanya for Kakamega has been calling us every other day to ask when we can give him another opportunity to appear before us, because he has realized that there is value in talking to the Senate. This committee has got men and women of broad experience. Professor Ongeri, Senator Matangi, and all these senators who are here. When we have a conversation, we are not having a conversation to find fault, but to find areas where we can intervene legislatively and where we can bring in policy initiatives. Finally, there is something we call the Fiscal Responsibility Index in the county allocation of revenue. we want to get to a position where this exercise that we are doing is factored into the fiscal responsibility index. You know that there's 2% that is awarded to counties on the basis of fiscal responsibility. I don't know whether UASIN GISHU has received anything as a result of fiscal responsibility, but the indicator has always been on on-source revenue. We want to incorporate issues of audit opinions and audit reports, and that is a conversation that is going on in the Finance Committee of the Senate. I don't want to say much more than that. Just to emphasize what Senator Kibiru said, that the Senate does not want to be a mortician. Senate wants to be a physician. We want to be more proactive. And that is why we've been talking of monitoring and evaluation, giving Senate the capacity to be a real-time partner in whatever it is going on in the counties. We do not want to execute. We are the defenders and representatives of the interests of counties and their governments. How do we build that contact so that we understand the interest of counties and the interest of their governments? There has to be a framework for consultation and a framework for collaboration. And that is why we have also come to the county government of UASIN GISHU. I have seen newspaper editorials questioning the expense of Senate coming down here. Governor, if you had to come to Nairobi with the entire team, you would incur cost. And I think it is lost on people that you coming to Nairobi is expensive. So I think that conversation around cost, if I repeat my earlier phrase, penny wise and pound foolish, I think there's a lot of value in Senate coming to the county, because county governments are our primary customers and are our primary clients. With that, I would request, before I open it to members, I would wish that the governor could make some opening remarks, and then members could respond, and we go straight to the audit issues. Governor, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, as a county government, we are pleased to have been also accorded the opportunity to appear before this Public Accounts and Investments Committee so that we can clarify on the issues that were raised by the Auditor General. Mr. Chairman, just for purposes of this committee, one of the things as a county and most counties are facing is actually shortage of personnel, shortage of auditors in this country. As a county, we've made efforts, and we would also like the Kenya National Audit to help us, because we had a program where we wanted to induct at least 12 accountants to be transitioned to become auditors. But Chairman, I want to sadly report here that the Office of the Auditor General has not facilitated us. And one of the functions of the national government and national government agencies is actually to build capacity. Number two, Mr. Chairman, even as there's need to build capacity in the counties, there is also need to build capacity in the Office of the Auditor General in terms of personnel. One of the things that we are aware as counties and also as a Council of Governors is that there is shortage of auditors, and the Auditor General is hiring private auditors to audit county governments. When the auditor who was auditing my books has resigned from the firm, who was auditing, the best person to actually prosecute my books is the person who went for the audit. That may not be achieved. It would have been much easier when the Office of the Auditor General is adequately staffed, and if possible, increase the number of hubs that they operate so that there is sufficient time for the Office of the Auditor General to interact with the county. The purpose of the Auditor General is also to help us as county governments to strengthen our systems. It might not be possible with the current workload for me to engage like the LRED app, which is responsible for almost 8 counties, to come and sit with my team, look at my systems in a detailed manner. It becomes almost impossible. And when we are forced to seek services of consultants and so forth, sometimes it's very difficult. One of the things that I know is within government and national government agencies, we have a lot of capacity and experience that can help county governments to actually strengthen their systems. And those are the agencies we would like to use to make sure that our systems improve we improve our accountability and the usage of funds that has been allocated to us. Mr. Chairman, I also wish to know that as a county, we were not beneficiaries of the fiscal index. But I want to state, Mr. Chairman, that one of the reasons why UASIN GISHU not a beneficiary is because the national government, ever since devolution started, they stopped paying their contribution in lieu of rates. In this county, that amounts to more than 400 million. As we speak today, one national government agency, the Kenya Railways, owes this county more than 2.5 billion shillings. Mr. Chairman, we would like the Senate committee to intervene and make sure that national government agencies pay their contribution in lieu of rates to all county governments, not just this county. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I want to assure you that as a county, we are working very hard to ensure there is fiscal discipline, proper records are maintained, and we are also working hard to ensure that the people of this county receive the services that this county has been allocated to perform. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Governor. Members, I would, if it's necessary to make comments, make brief comments, then we go into the audit issues. Let me start with the Vice Chair, Senator Linturi.
I may not be as brief as you may imagine, with due respect, Chair, because I think it's necessary that I make an elaborate view of what the Governor has said and something else which probably may not be in the audit query, and I think it's of public interest and concern as a country. Chair, why I say this is because you remember in many instances when governors have appeared before us, we have taken it as a serious responsibility to ask on the levels or amounts of pending bills in their counties in the country. And pending bills is what I referred to in the Senate last Thursday when we were debating the taxation and the public debt as an internal debt that government is borrowing from suppliers of services and goods without paying for them, and hence have serious impact in our economy because there isn't any cash flow in the economy. So, Chair, I would, if this, I beg to be excused, if this has been discussed before, in view that I had the opportunity to attend a number of meetings. So if it was addressed, I wouldn't want it, the DPP, EACC, and the judiciary. Without funding the office of the Auditor General, if there is no sufficient provision, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, will not be anywhere. Why am I saying this? 321 billion of the money going to 14 going to counties will have the auditors going through for them to understand whether the money was properly spent. If they have less staff, if they have less to move around, 14 billion is not little money. You require sufficient budget to fund them. The national budget of around the remaining amount of almost a trillion going for national projects without the office of the Auditor General, who is going to follow up on how that expenditure has been done. So, Mr. Chair, what I'm saying is that the issues being raised here are very important. EACC or DCI are really looking at the criminal part of trying to fight this war, yet the amount of money as was proposed, as was sent last time by the end of current public service, Mr. Kenya, when he was PS Treasury, saying 30% of the national budget goes to peripherange, who has the legal mandate of checking how money is lost. It's the Auditor General. So we must fight. We must ensure that in one or another that is funded, so that he has adequate staff to assign to Governor Mandago, who is so permanently ready and willing to have his books inspected, so that we also have enough work or reports coming to the Senate, to the assemblies, and the others. I rest my case, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice. Members note that Senator Linturi was making his maiden speech in UASIN GISHU. and maiden speeches are not to be disturbed. For the rest of the members, you have already spoken before, so restrict yourselves to 3 minutes. We start with Senator Kibiru, then Senator Omanga.
Thank you, Chair. Mine, as usual, is short. Just for purposes of the issues that have arisen before, maybe Governor would want you to mention something about your challenges or your experiences with the technology called IFMIS. Because most of the governors who have come have really complained about the challenges and also the contribution of sometimes access to IFMIS when it comes to issues of payment and the likes. The other one, Chairman, is that the governor also need to come on record by stating that the interns that he wanted to be attached to the Auditor General's office, the county of UASIN GISHU was willing and ready to pay for their stipends. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor, take note, you'll respond to all the issues consolidated. Senator Omanga?
Okay, maybe Chair, I wanted to comment on what the governor raised, and it's very important because it's also across other counties about government agencies. The rates, what he talked about, and other government agencies. I remember there's another, Mombasa County is owed a lot of billions also from these government agencies. And as Senate, we are the link between the county governments and these government agencies. I think, Chair, we need to do something about it. Because if the county owes the national government, like KRA, I know KRA is on the neck of the counties, and yet they are not doing the same. Lest I advised Governor Mandago to do what my governor of Nairobi did, to clamp all their cars for Kenya Power and all that.
You are out of order. Can you proceed in a more orderly fashion, or you're done?
I'm done.
That's not the kind of advice we came to render to the counties, to clamp vehicles.
Chair, you know, when they are pushed, we'll get to that if the Senate doesn't come in.
Nairobi is special. Senator Matangi.
Yes, Chair, I just wanted to make also a brief comment on two issues. First is on that issue that you raised on any possible speculation as far as the expenses or expenditure of the Senate is concerned in endeavoring on this county visit, Chair. And just quickly, I would liken it to probably, Chair, according to Article 96, you know, parenting by proxy, because that is indeed what Senate would have been deemed to have done before, given the mandate that the Constitution bestows upon us. And for all the 5 years, the House sat in Nairobi. I mean, Chair, on a light touch, you could liken it to a father who goes to work in the city and only asks Mama and the children to come and see him down at his workplace and never goes home. So there should be celebration when Daddy decides to go home. And I believe that you know, it should be appreciated that the learning and the exchange of experiences and certainly a way forward should be something that the nation should be happy about. Secondly, Chair, quickly, on that issue that was raised by Senator Linturi on pending bills, Chair. And this is a subject that I always like to have my views on so that we can exchange notes with county governments. If you look at the scenario and the situation that we have right now in our country, Chair, every citizen is worried about how and what will leadership do about the economy to give our people at least some hope based on what the cost of living has become. And Chair, one aspect that has been, and I hope is clear to the governor of UASIN GISHU, is you know, counties have had this trend of draining the power of their own base economy by inviting their own citizens to supply to them, for example, in small items, small tenders, and at the end of the day, failing to pay their local suppliers. So you find you have small households where a mother is being auctioned because she mortgaged their land parcel to go and supply small things to a county. You find a mzee who is having to battle auctioneers, Senator, Chair, because they went and did a small job, including even what has been given, Chair, as opportunities even to disabled, to women groups, to come and do small contracts for roads.
Motion in the floor of the House to ensure that we compel the national government to meet the obligations in terms of the rates. One of the things that I can say that I've noted, and it's good for us to have this conversation, is that you've actually been able to collect about 90% of your budgeted local receipts or from your local sources. So the 10%, which even the auditor is querying, that to me already has an answer, that is money which has not been paid to you by the national government. So we want to encourage you, and we will be doing this because it's under our mandate through the Constitution to protect your interest. So I commit to introducing a motion that will be able to compel national government to meet the obligation. Thanks.
A very positive contribution. Professor?
Thank you, Chair. Let me take this earliest opportunity to thank the governor and his executive and the people of UASIN GISHU County for the warm reception they have given us. You have raised a very critical point of capacity building. I believe that capacity building is always an ongoing process. One would have expected that during the transitional authority that some of these issues should have been put in place, and therefore will only be dealing with the value addition on the capacity building on areas that you have identified. And indeed, one of the biggest problems we have noted of late when governors appear before us is the lack of paucity of the manpower, particularly in the financial sector of their operations. And I think that's why we've come here. I'm not worried about the chairman's worry about people making noises out there or why we're here. And I think from yesterday's interaction, both at the park and also at the MTRH and the group of people that we met, and I'm sure also at the ad hoc committee on maize and the other places, there's so much goodwill and the information flowing in very freely. And this is a great asset, both to Senate, to county assemblies, and also to the county executives. I think we're beginning to see a relationship which is developing, which is critical for the management of resources of this country. Let me make one comment. Thank you for being transparent. You're willing to subject yourself to audit, and therefore you are now requesting that the Auditor General's capacity be enhanced for you to appear. This is a positive thinking, and that's the way every county must think, so that we make this an exercise carrying out the mandates that we've been given in various levels. At your level, at the park level, and at the Senate level, at the county assembly level. This is the way that things must happen in this country. One of the things which is worrying me is the ballooning public debt. And I think it's already eating into the issues that you've already raised, inability to be able to raise enough resources to even pay the internal debts that you owe to your suppliers. Your suppliers are your, as it were, your partners. And if they are left out in this circuit, and then the county will run into a halt. Finally, I would expect when you make final presentation, in your presentation as we go through this audit report, that you come quite clear on the issues of assets and liabilities. I think this is an area where county governments have lost track of what they own, what they have, whether in the form of land, in the form of houses, in the form of fixed assets, in the form of mobile assets. And I think it's important that you pronounce yourself quite clearly on the issue of assets and, of course, the liabilities. Today, the liabilities that are being carried over totally at the level of the national government, 99 billion owed by the county government. And I think it's a huge sum of money which is impeding on the issue of the supply of money for the counties. Let me not go too far because we'll be interacting as we move along. But I want to finally say thank you for your accepting to appear before Public Accounts Committee in a transparent manner. And I believe the people who are in GISHU are already glued up on television watching on how their governor. You have an opportunity to either quit yourself or I don't want to say the other one. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. We will now want to move very fast. Governor, the kind of comments you have heard from my committee members is a kind of information we hope to get when the Auditor General starts doing a performance audit. Some of the broad issues that we talked about. And I think that's where Senate derives pleasure, not in analyzing bank reconciliations and analyzing interest surrenders. On pending bills, I know issue number 22 in the Auditor General's report is on accounts payable, but it is accounts payable as at 2014-2015. So I'll expect you to make a very brief report to members that as at the close of the last financial year, how much does the county government owe to various parties in terms of pending bills, and what is your strategy for settlement? On assets and liabilities, I've also noted that issue number 28 deals with that, so we can deal with it substantively. And then on the issue of technology challenges that were raised by Senator Kibiru, you can make a statement just for our appreciation of the challenges that you have here.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and honorable members of this committee. On a number of issues that have been raised, particularly on the issue of pending bills. First and foremost, let me say that as a county government of UASIN GISHU, when we came into office in 2013, we had a number of pending bills, and together with the Transition Authority and the Office of the Auditor General, we were able to go through all our pending bills. As a county government, I want to assure you that we've paid all previous pending bills except the bills we have for NSSF and pension, where we are still struggling to get the clarity of the records on as to what was paid and what was outstanding. That is from the carryover of what we before NLC and anybody interested, and calling the county government of UASIN GISHU and others. While we have written several letters to NLC, we've put documents. National Land Commission themselves visited the very parcel of land. We don't understand how, when it comes to now them deciding to give an individual, the county government becomes others. We need the support and intervention in terms of legislation to streamline our relationship in terms of land management between public resources. And I think Kenyans must begin appreciating that you need to put some resources on the oversight process to watch over the lot of resources that is being spent. Over and above us getting the opportunity to respond, Mr. Chairman, it is an opportunity for my staff who might have been negligent in their duty to hear from the Senate with their own ears the consequences of not managing the records well, the consequences of not paying suppliers on time, and the effects it can have on the economy. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor. Members, I know it's very compelling to respond to the issues, but I would beg that we maintain focus. It's like we came to hunt a rabbit, but we have found an antelope. So let's focus on the rabbit. Senator Manga.
Chair, mine, it's 5 seconds. I just wanted maybe the governor to confirm, because the other counties, they've been complaining on the disbursement of funds, that they have to send a team from finance to actually go lobby at the control of budget for her to authorize, and to treasury, and actually it has been a team which is going, and that the process is not seamless, and there are challenges. Maybe the governor can comment on that.
Okay, just 1 minute, the control of budget process.
Chairman, it's not really to go and lobby, but the process is not seamless. You cannot send your request and sit in the office and expect the funds to arrive. You will actually end up being unable to pay your salaries. Literally, we have to send staff to go and follow from one office, from control of budget to treasury, and make sure it has gone to central bank, a process that is really completely very tedious. And they're also expensive. Because if every month when I make my requisition, I have to send 2 officers to go and camp in Nairobi, paying them per diem to be there, to follow for releases that are supposed to be automatic when we present our documents, then it defeats the purpose. That process of requisition should actually be online. And that is why we have IFMIS. And if IFMIS is not going to be able to address my requisition online from the office, then it is becoming a... And one of the things, Chairman, that I would want the Senate to look at is this IFMIS system. This system has been re-engineered at exorbitant costs. But we are not seeing that necessary efficiency in this system.
Thank you. Members, I beg that we proceed. As we proceed with the Auditor General's report, some of these issues will recur. Governor, we have taken note of your contribution, very consistent with what we have heard from other counties. Your challenges with IFMIS, the control of budget process, the cash flow management that Treasury seems to be doing, and the delays in disbursements that cause the issues of pending. Senator Linturi, I hope you've taken note of the amount in pending bills, 324 million?
319.
319 million.
196.
Yeah, and I think when we get to issue number 22, we will query that further, and we will incorporate the views that Senator Wamatangi had given earlier on supporting local business and by not holding their funds. We shall proceed as follows. We are reviewing the report of the Auditor General. So, Auditor General, you will give us your opinion, take us through the basis of your opinion. Because the Governor has formally tabled his written response, we will not necessarily go through each issue. There are certain issues that we will rely on the written response, but guidance on the issues that we need to consider in public. So, Auditor General, let's proceed. Is that a point of order, Senator Wamatangi?
Just on a point of order, Chair. Maybe in light of what the Auditor General had said earlier, that because I believe he's on record as having said that he may not have been able to look at some of the issues comprehensively in light of the fact that some of those documents were received yesterday. Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The response as follows. It is true the statement received a deficit of 576,975 and 52, but the reconciliation has been done. Proceeds from domestic and foreign grants of 14,940,000 had not been factored in. The national government exchequer releases, which is found on note 4, of 4,529,662,890. Local revenue collected on note 11 of 800,196,541, giving a total of 5,344,799,431. Mr. Chairman, if you look at the initial draft expenditure return was 5,992,923,039, hence the variance of 648,123,608. The deficit was financed from bank balance brought forward from the previous financial year. And we have a table there showing how those funds were, and the balances were rebudgeted during the supplementary budget in the financial year 2014-15, which mitigated the deficit, Mr. Chairman.
Auditor General, have you looked at the annexures, and are you satisfied with the response from the Governor?
Thank you, Chair. We have reviewed the documents availed, and we confirm that the county rolled forward balances for the year 2013-2014, which they spent in the year under review. And the reconciliations have also been reviewed, and we concur with the response. Thank you, Chair.
So I see two issues here. That's the cash basis versus accrual basis of accounting, which is a conversation that is going on at the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board. I think the CCs and CEOs of finance have proposed that we go accrual basis rather than cash basis. I see a second issue here on supplementary. Was this approved? You can confirm that there was a supplementary budget approved by the Assembly?
Yeah, there was a supplementary budget which was approved the County Assembly of UASIN GISHU.
Before we close this, members, any comment?
Chair,
Senator
just for purposes of clarity and as we move ahead, just from the Auditor General, what was the opinion in the 2013-2014? And why I'm asking that, Chair, is that you realize that when we have a professional who is a CPAK handling some of these issues and you get an opinion like this, then you need to be worried if you are the person handling the finances, because even the professional body would seriously want to come in and find out what is it that you are doing to get that kind of an opinion. So it is, as we progress, Chair, probably the Auditor General need to tell us, was there an opinion like this in 2013-2014? And to the Governor, are you sure the professional you have who is handling these issues really understands the implications of that kind of an opinion? Thank you.
Let's consolidate the responses. Senator Olekina.
I think Senator Kibiru has asked a question that I wanted to ask, but I just want to re-emphasize on one important thing, Governor. And I think the auditors can tell us, given that this error was corrected, why was it difficult for this information to be given, to be availed to the auditors on time? You know, and you see, when you do not submit this information, if at all you're saying you're being diligent and you're being penalized, because I know, Governor, you responded and you said you have your own opinion on this matter, why was it difficult for your staff to provide this information, to show that this was a balance brought forward that funded the over expenditure?
So, Governor, you can respond to the two issues.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Let me allow my chief officer to respond on particularly on the issue of submission of documents, so that I can make a concluding remarks on that. But on what Senator from Kirinyaga was asking is, I think this was the first audit report that we got a disclaimer.
I will rely more on the Auditor General on that. Auditor General, can you confirm?
Thank you, Chair. The county government of UASIN GISHU has had 3 consecutive disclaimer of opinions. That is 13-14, 14-15, and 15-16. Thank you, Chair.
So you need to update your records accordingly, Governor, and your professionals running your finance docket. Proceed.
Thank you, Chair. On the submission of the documents, we did submit, Chair, but I think we were a bit late. We submitted by 1 day, Chair, on the deadline. That one I must admit. It was 1 day when we submitted the documents.
Chair, I think here we are being treated to some issues that what sometimes I call accounting 101. When the auditors do the first initial audit, they give what we call the management letter. You are supposed to respond on the management letter. Honestly, if you are the accountant that you are supposed to be, we should not be talking about this kind of issues today. And I think the accountants in this room would want to bear me witness that some of these issues need to have been addressed when the management letter was given back to you by the auditor, unless the Auditor General is telling us he didn't give you the management letter.
I think at that point, we need to refer to the law. The Public Audit Act, Section 62. Auditor General, could you read it out? Because we need to lay the basis for this conversation.
Chair, 62, where the Auditor General establishes, sorry, Chair. A person shall not, and I go to C of section 62.1, without justification, fail to provide information within reasonable time that is required under this act. Section 62, section 2, Chair, has a penalty which says a person who contravenes subsection 1 commits an offense and is liable to, on conviction, to a fine not exceeding 5 million shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 years or both. Thank you, Chair.
So there are consequences, and Governor, you cannot make that very casual statement that we admit that we submitted 1 day late. It is a requirement of the law, and there are consequences. And so going forward, whether it is the Senate or the County Assembly prosecuting this matter, we must take it very seriously. I think there's some casualness with which this matter is being handled. Before you respond, and members, you can make very brief comments so that we can move quickly to the next issue. Senator Lekina, then Senator Linturi. Okay, Senator Linturi, then Senator Matangi.
Yes, Chairman, because I really sympathize with the state and situation Governor Mandago is in, and I am really afraid that a county can have 3 disclaimer opinions from the Auditor General, and then the matter is just taken casually. I would want to, I believe Governor Mandago is serving his 2nd term, and I think he has a responsibility to ensure a good legacy for this county. I do not know whether his chief executive or his cabinet or the chief officers are the ones that served in this 1st term, because if they are the same officers that served in his 1st term and got 2 disclaimer opinions, the 3 disclaimer opinions were given during his 1st term. If you've not learned to change the style, then it means by the time we are getting to your last year of your term, and these things are not corrected, then there will be a lot of mess here. The buck stops at your doorstep. You are vicariously liable for the actions of your chief officers because you are the person whose power has been given to the people, and these others act and serve at your pleasure. So if you cannot be in a position to deal with the matter, and it is not because probably there are no other people that can serve, or people can be able to understand the law and what is required of them to submit the documents, because you cannot be the one submitting or looking at these papers. You are just there to oversee. These things happen. So what I'm saying is you must rein on your chief officer, finance, or chief executive officer, finance, or whoever it is, to ensure these records are really brought, updated, and so that you're in conformity with the law, and so that the next time this should not really happen. It's really sad.
Senator Matangi?
Yes, Chair. I believe, Chair, because we are looking at the audit reports of the year 2014-15, and this was, I think, the 2nd year of devolution. Chair, we would acknowledge first that I believe that since then, and probably up to now, 2017-18, the governor of UASIN GISHU, I'm sure, by now has seen the light and has probably, got to improve. Because you remember, Chair, during this season, 2013-14 and then 14-15, is when the Council of Governors had very bad leadership, because we have to put it correctly. And this is when, Chair, actually the Council of Governors believed that they could lead counties and protect their turf by using the courts of law. In the year 2014-15, for the records, actually there was a court injunction and a court order that had been sought by the Council of Governors, that they should not be accountable and they should not respond to the Senate at that particular time. But subsequently, Chair, it is my view that then this position has changed, and I believe from the relationships now that we have had with governors, hopefully, and maybe as is borne witness by the fact that the governor has hosted the Senate here and facilitated, and indeed made in his opening remarks, that now counties appreciate the fact that there is value in this interaction. I believe then there has been steady, inclined and useful positive progress, Chair. And so probably what we'd be saying is that in the course of that learning curve, the governors should have learned, and I believe they have learned, and the governor for us in GISHU ought, and I believe, and I hope, is one of them. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Olekina, very brief comment.
Chair, I think this is an issue of capacity. I'm concerned, Governor, that 3 years you get the same advance report opinion. And I'm wondering whether your team is aware that the PFM Act requires monthly reconciliation done and submitted to the auditor. Because if you know that, then we should not be having these issues. You know, it really, really concerns me. And I'm actually also shocked that the governor would say that you only got one, yet the auditor says it's 3 advance reports. So we need to reconcile those two. And also we need to understand whether your team has got that capacity. Because if they don't have, and I know we're going to be sitting down and considering whether to penalize or to surcharge for that, the issue of capacity, it is very, very important, Governor.
Governor, most of the comments we have made shall also apply to subsequent audit findings. It's just laying the basis. You can deal with the specific issues, and then we move on.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Having said that on the statements, let me also say that one of the roles of the Office of the Auditor General is actually to facilitate counties to strengthen systems. In the 3 years that the Auditor General says we have had a disclaimer, for the 2 financial years we appeared in the Senate, Mr. Chairman, we were cleared of most of those things. And one of the challenges we were facing is when we submit documents to the Auditor General and they don't incorporate even after having received the letter of management, the things that we had dispensed with the Office of the Auditor General, we get surprised when they appear in the final report again. I want to go on record, Mr. Chairman, that if we are to do a forensic audit of this county and look at the efforts we've made in managing public resources, probably we can say we might be having challenges. Capacity is one of the challenges, but even notwithstanding the challenges, we, and I as the governor of this county, take the matters of audit very seriously. But I also want to be on record that the officer who was heading this office, this regional office, was not cooperative.
We have a duty to cooperate with the Auditor General and to do what the law requires us to do as far as the Auditor General's role is concerned. It is a constitutional office. Governor, on this issue, having received evidence that there was a supplementary budget and it was more of an accounting issue, the committee would clear this, but we must also point out, Professor Ongeri is a doctor. There is something called professional negligence. Senator Linturi is an advocate. There is professional negligence. What constitutes professional negligence on the part of a member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants? And in my view, it must be expanded to include a chief officer or a member of the institute who invites an adverse opinion or disclaimer of opinion. That is professional negligence. It is a discussion that I took to the Institute of Public Accountants. I remember I addressed their annual gathering when we were in Mombasa after the stormy session, and I put it to them that they must also reprimand their members who invite this kind of opinions. Because, Governor, probably you're not a member of the institute, but you have officers who are members of the institute. So in making our recommendations, we will also point out at possible professional consequences for chief officers who do not keep proper books of accounts. We then move on to the next issue, number 2. I've seen the Auditor General has flagged that that has been resolved. We'll not spend too much time on it. Let's go to issue number 3, Auditor General.
Chair. Raised from that query, which I want probably the governor to shine the light on, is that before money was borrowed, or before the local financing arrangement was entered into between the county government of UASIN GISHU and Kenya Commercial Bank, I think the situation that obtained then was that this amount of money was required to fund these tractors. So the question is, before picking on the 400 and something million to be financed, there must have been a process that must have preceded this figure, which should have been ordinarily the mode or process of identification of these equipments and the negotiations on the price of these equipments. So simply I'm asking whether there was a competitive process in adherence with the Procurement Act to buy or to identify the vehicles and to ensure that the process was efficient, was effective, and was cost efficient, because the participating agencies that I've just found here, or institutions, are around 3. There couldn't be 3 or 4 companies selling equipment in Kenya. I just want to know whether there was a tender, and out of the evaluation process, these vehicles were identified for purchase at these prices, and for that matter, then the amounts of money required to purchase is what made them apply for a loan of 470 million from KCB.
Now, Governor, let me summarize what my members have raised, and I want us to be specific so that we move quickly. Was there an approval of the Assembly on this matter? And is it part of the appendices that we have? I just want you to respond. Is there an approval by the Assembly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Is it part of the documents that have been submitted before us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Could you just refer us to the relevant annex? And as you look for that, is it in the pack? Yes, we need to see that so that we if it's there, then we move on to the next issue. Now, as he looks for that, was there a guarantee by the national government?
Mr. Chairman, there was no guarantee from national government.
Senator Lekina, which article of the Constitution were you referring to?
Chair, I was referring to Article 212, and I'm just going to read it. It says, a county government may borrow only if the national government guarantees the loan, and with the approval of the county government assembly.
Okay, so that's the Constitution. It is further expanded in the PFM Act. Was there a procurement plan for this equipment?
Mr. Chairman, yes, and the tender was an open national tender.
And those details have been provided to us in the appendices?
Mr. Chairman, that was not part of the query, but if the committee wants the documents to that effect, we are ready to avail.
Senate looks at the big picture, so we must also be prepared to respond to the big picture. We will need to get details of the procurement plan, because you don't just wake up and decide to spend 680 million. There must have been a plan, and there must be a process, and that is what Senator Linturi was asking. Were the amounts sent to the County Revenue Fund, the CRF?
Mr. Chairman, the funds were not sent to the CRF because this was an asset finance. And the financier would always want to pay for that asset. For assurance of the financier that is paying for the asset that was negotiated and agreed, then they pay the suppliers. Our duty was to supply the financier with those companies that are won the tenders for those particular equipments.
And it is the reason why people say the law is an us. The law requires that all proceeds from revenue, from loans, etc., first be deposited in the county revenue fund. We had this conversation nationally when we were talking about Eurobond and whether Eurobond, the proceeds, were sent to the consolidated fund. So the amounts never went to the CRF, they went straight to the service providers. Number 4, the logbooks for the equipment, have they been released and are they in the name of the county? Governor, on the logbooks?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the logbooks are here, the discharges are here. We've sent to NTSA for the discharge to all to be now in the county government.
So the transfer to the, it was joint ownership with the...
It was joint ownership.
There was a lien on it, so that's discharged.
We have the discharge document, and we've already sent to NTSA.
Okay. So it appears that in this park, we don't have the assembly approval. Do we have the, no, you confirmed that there was no treasury guarantee. You confirmed that the amounts never went to CRF. You've confirmed that there was a procurement plan and there was a process, but we need to see that. And you confirmed that the loan having been paid, the discharge of the lien is in progress. Members, running counties is different from running a personal business.
We are still holding this to see the minutes. And the appendix.
It is not there.
Oh, okay.
Or the approval of the assembly. Yes, so it is not before us. So as far as we are concerned, it is not there. It is not there until it is before us. So Senator Kibiru, don't wait too long. It's not there. Professor?
Yeah, but going through these documents, one of the requirements from the bank, and I've looked at it, the county assembly resolution authorizing the borrowing of 484,488,128. So it ought to be part of this package. If you were able to provide it to the bank, why is it not available to us? This is on 9X3 of your documents.
Professor, you are more familiar with that park than even the authors, and I think because you're a naturally intelligent person, but the county should be the ones showing us where those records are, because if you found it, then Governor, I know it is not your duty to put together this park. Can you whip your team to give us what we want so that we can move on quickly?
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, can you kindly allow us to get that document in the course of these proceedings?
Okay. Members, any final comments before we
Chair, I think I'd have an issue with that because these documents have been tabled here. So unless you give directions on how that additional documents will be tabled, you know.
Well, this is a 2014-2015 audit, and those are documents that should have been there. I mean, you are not a new governor. You have control over the records of that administration. In the absence of those documents, and in the absence of those records, we can only arrive at a conclusion that there was a material breach of the law in this particular procurement. And therefore, the committee, when sitting down to write its recommendations, shall be guided by the PFM Act and shall recommend further investigations to establish whether the law was followed, whether there was value for money, and whether there was prudence in utilization of public funds. And if that is not established, then we will have to surcharge or to recommend prosecution of the officials involved in that particular procurement. I think that is the direction we shall take as a committee. If there is any evidence that
will change our position. That then needs to be tendered before we close these proceedings. Senator Linturi?
But I think I agree with you, Chair, and that's the direction we must take. But I think it's important to simply tell Governor Mandago to provide you that information before the close of the day, because that will inform us before on when serious material information that will guide us and the kind of recommendation that we come up with. So I don't find it really a big thing. Let them give us the resolution if indeed says that it is there.
Chair, just an observation is that, and this is to Governor. Governor, it looks like you have a challenge with your staff, honestly speaking, because some of these issues needed to have been addressed by the people who are in charge of providing those documents. Please don't spare them.
The context with which we are looking at this is a national debate on debt management. We have the national debt, which some of us have said is unsustainable, and others are saying is sustainable. Counties are also incurring debt. That is a subject that has escaped a lot of attention. You are allowed by the Constitution, you are allowed by the Act, but the procedures are there. And Governor, I might sympathize with you that you had a bright idea which needed to be executed. But unfortunately, there is the law, which we must operate within its confines. Sometimes you want to be pragmatic, but pragmatism and the law are strange bedfellows. So please provide us with those documents in the course of the day today. Otherwise, we shall make our recommendations that there was a material breach of procedures and of the law, and we will be seeking to establish if there was a conspiracy to defraud the county government of Western GISHU. So ordered. We move to the next issue. Auditor General, again, I've seen that issue number 4. Yeah, we can spend a minute on issue number 4 under collection receipt very quickly.
Chairman, maybe just before we go to number 4, Chairman.
Auditor General,
Yes.
My apologies. I think Professor asked something about the negotiation fees of 1%. I just want us to confirm that the account of the governor has been supported by evidence so that it does not remain as an issue. I think you had flagged it that the negotiation fees was on the entire amount. Can you just confirm that?
Thank you, Chair. We can confirm that the negotiation fee was charged on the actual amount received. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So let's move to 4.1.
Chairman, let me draw your attention to paragraph 29 of the Public Audit Act. Report on page 9. On page 9, Chair. Irregular borrowing of funds. Are we there, Chair?
Yes, since it came as a finding, yeah, maybe we just need to deal with it so that we move on to other things. Can you just read that?
Yes, Chair.
Paragraph 29, irregular borrowing of funds. A review of records made available indicate that the county executive signed an agreement on 29th August 2014 for an asset finance loan of Kenya shillings 484,488,128 shillings from Kenya Commercial Bank, out of which Kenya shillings 378,966,700 was received at an interest cost of 30,887,4 shillings. However, no evidence was availed for audit verification to confirm that the loan was obtained at a competitive cost as required by Section 141, Subsection 1 of the Public Financial Management Act 2012. There was no evidence that the loan was guaranteed by the national government as per the law and was not based on 5% of the most recent audited revenue, as there was no audited financial statement at the time of borrowing, and at a 5% on audited accounts of 2013-14 would amount to Kenya shillings 223,055,779, which is below the figure of Kenya shillings 378,966,700 borrowed. Consequently, the county raised an asset finance loan contrary to the provisions of the law, and the county may not have received value for money.
Governor, what was your response to this? Is it the same as, just go to issue number 29.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a Chief Officer of Finance, and I can confirm he was a Chief Officer of Finance in that period also, to respond to that matter.
Chair, thank you. My response to that is that, as stated earlier, Chair, it's true the county government gave priority to roads infrastructure during that period. And as said, Chair, because of the scheduled disbursement from the National Treasury, and we had given priority to roads, we actually went for the bridging finance because it assisted us acquire the equipment so that we were able to do the roadworks infrastructure. And therefore, Chair, we went to our bankers, the Kenya Commercial Bank. Chair, at that time, we did request for quotation from the other banks, but most of the banks, Chair, did not submit the quotations in time. So we quote from Kenya Commercial Bank, and since we had an existing relationship with Kenya Commercial Bank, we also looked at the interest rate in which they were charging, Chair. It was the cheapest, although the other commercial banks did not give us their quotations in time. And Chair, we've gone ahead to also confirm that if you look at the amount of roadworks that were done by the equipment, although we paid interest of 30 million, including the 30 million, Chair, is including the negotiation fee of 3.7 million. So the cost that we incurred on the interest element for the period that we got the equipment compared with the amount of road networks and the roads department, Chair, have given us a table of the amount of work that was done by those equipment, totaling to around 370 million. Yes, Chair, we did not use the 5% as required by the law. But Chair, we considered it a bridging finance because the budget was in our budget for budgets of road equipment. So that was the basis, Chair, under which we did not go for the national guarantee because the asset itself was kind of it was a security in itself in the joint of the county and Kenya Commercial Bank, as stated earlier, Chair. Thank you.
Members, I don't see any new submission different from the one that was submitted earlier. And so the position remains the same. We see the output, the value for money, but there's the procedural issues that we cannot run away from. And as we are formulating our recommendations, I think we can have a paragraph on how will counties manage this process, because you sound like you are making business decisions. And if you're running a business, maybe that's how you'd make these decisions. But you're running a government entity, and there are rules and there are laws that must be followed. So I would sympathize, but I would still stick to the requirement of the law. Senator Olekino?
Yeah, and the governor has just introduced another interesting aspect, which I'd like some clarification from both the governor and maybe the auditor, in terms of that element of bridging financing, so that we can be fair. Is it, auditor, can you maybe clarify whether we can treat this matter as bridging financing, or is it borrowing as envisioned by the Constitution?
Auditor General.
Thank you, Chair. From the contract signed between the county government and KCB Bank, it was a borrowing. So it should be treated as a borrowing.
We have before us a letter dated 21st of February 2014 from the County Assembly of UASIN GISHU regarding the issue that the county and government engages with KCB in order to make use of the fiscal space through asset finance borrowing of 484 million. My only concern with this letter is that it is not signed. I don't have a page that is signed, so I don't know who the author is. Provide us with a complete document that will help us to make the right decisions. And so this in itself, we are not going to accept. Give us a letter that is signed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We shall make sure before the close of this session we shall have availed.
Very well. So can we proceed to the issue of receipts that we were on? I think that was 4.1. Auditor General.
Through the chair, paragraph 4.0, other receipts. 4.1, under collections, under collection receipts. The county government of UASIN GISHU budgeted to collect other receipts of Kenya shillings 890 million for the year 2014-2015. However, Kenya shillings 800,196,541 was collected, resulting in an under collection of receipts of Kenya shillings 89,903,459, or approximately 10% of the budgeted revenue collection from local sources. No explanation was provided for the under collection of other receipts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Our response to that is, it is true that there was under collection of revenue receipts in the financial year 2014-15, as indicated below. The local revenue budgeted in the financial year 2014-15 was 890 million Kenya shillings. Our actual collection in the financial year 2014-15 was 800,196,541, and our deficit was 89,803,459. Mr. Chairman, we were unable to collect as we had estimated because, one, we had a challenge in collection of rent in the properties that are owned by the county because of court cases that tenants took us to court, and there was a court order. There's nothing much we could have done. Mr. Chairman, we have also contribution in lieu of rates from national government agencies that are not paid. The other challenge, Mr. Chairman, as I had already mentioned in my opening remarks, is the procedure of the land registration, where we don't get to get the title so that we be registered in our database for rates collection, became a challenge.
Chair.
Senator Kibiru.
For starters, I must say that I need to commend the county. 10%, 90% is a good performance for starters. We have seen worse cases where people are failing 70%. So I think that is a good job, but then there is a room for pulling up the socks. I needed to make that remark, Chair.
You have spoken on our behalf. Now, this really is not an issue for the auditor to confirm because it's a broad policy issue. And Governor, you alluded to it in your opening remarks, and you've also confirmed that you did not receive anything on the fiscal responsibility index because it is based on on-source revenue generation. On the issue of rates, do you have an up-to-date valuation roll?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we now have an up-to-date valuation roll.
Okay. Members, any query on that? Yeah, Senator Bedama.
Chair, thank you. Governor, I just wanted to know, this was a 2014-2015 deficit. Since then, have you continued experiencing the same issue in terms of the court cases which are there, or were you able to sort out the issue of the court cases? And then if not, have you considered using alternative dispute resolution to try and resolve that issue? Because you know, we know so many counties. Like yesterday we had, I think the county of Baringo, that had done very, very poorly in terms of collecting their revenue. And that Ali had said, congratulations for actually having collected a lot of revenue. But I wanted to know whether this has continued being a trend, that you've collected more revenue and that the rate of 10% has either gone down or it has remained there.
Chair, just a small rider on that, because an issue has risen here, is that probably you had not set a lower figure so that you could achieve the 90%.
Being the devil's advocate.
Yeah, we have seen that in counties. There are counties that received 1 billion shillings for fiscal responsibility, and sometimes we suspect they set the target too low so that they can achieve it. And there was a county that that underperformed by just about, was it 90 million? That must have been Laikipia. And they didn't get anything. Even you have underperformed by 10%, so you will lose. So I think even that index needs to be graduated, that it's not just about 100% accomplishment, but if you get 90%, maybe you can get something out of that. Professor?
So out of curiosity, Chair, this figure was as it related to 2014-2015 financial year. In your subsequent financial years, including up to the last financial year, would you say that your receipts are beyond the current, the level that are exhibited in this audit report? And if so, how much are you receiving at the moment? Are you still constantly underperforming at 10%, or you're falling down? Because we want to see the chronological graph of your collection so far in as far as the revenue is concerned. And finally, have you given any waiver? And if so, to what extent?
Governor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me say that the revenue collection has not been consistent because the subsequent years, we also suffered an issue of, again, a court order, and we were not able to collect a major part of our revenue, which is also on land rates. But this year, as we closed at that June, our collections was at 805. But Mr. Chairman, because of that fiscal responsibility, we thought ourselves that we had overestimated what we were to collect. So we reduced our target to 850. Because really, as a governor of this county, I wouldn't understand why a county that has made an improvement by just 1 million shillings could get 1 billion, while us we are setting a serious target for us to achieve, and actually having exceeded what was being collected. Our fault was in setting a higher target. But in terms of collecting more than what the councils were collecting, we had actually surpassed. So those who got 1 billion put their target to what the former councils were collecting. But for us, we surpassed what the former councils was collecting by over 300 million, but we were never beneficiaries. So we were hoping that we are going to collect more than 850 so that we also get an extra 1 billion. Because really that basis of just improvement without, scales of by what much you improved, there are counties which improved by less than 10 million and they got money for fiscal responsibility. We improved our revenue collection by more than 300 million, but we never got the money for fiscal responsibility.
I think you are changing of goalposts on the figure. We'll need to look at Chapter 6 of the Constitution to confirm whether it was ethical. Because if we all go that way, then we know what will happen.
Mr. Chairman,
but I understand where you are coming from.
Let me also clarify so that it was really ethical. Because one of the things that we wanted is also not to incur pending bills, working on a budget of over-estimated revenue, then the actual funds that come cannot match the goods and services that we have consumed. So we are also trying to balance and making sure that the county does not end up in debt as a result of overestimating the local revenues.
And the status of the court cases, the matters that have been taken before the
Mr.
court?
Chairman, some of the cases has been dispensed, like the ones for rent now for housing. Now we have impact on serious collection. But Mr. Chairman, those people are not paying rent for more than 2 years when the matter was pending in court. But that case has since been dispensed.
Okay, members, I think we can proceed. That's a broad conversation on issues of revenue collection.
Now, on other receipts, I want us to defer, not to defer really, but to consider the governor's written response to the issues that come under 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and let us look at 4.5. Auditor General, 4.5. So just to provide clarity to the governor, you have done a written response which you have tabled and on oath, so we don't have to spend time going through that. We've taken the decision that we'll rely on your written response. So let's focus on 4.5.
Okay. Chair, 4.5, deposits not reflected in the bank statements. A review of bank pay-in slips of land rates paid by the landowners in the county revenue account revealed that deposits totaling to Kenya shillings 2,988,323 had been receipted and recorded in the cash book, but were not reflected in the county revenue account bank statements. The management reported the matter to the bank management to confirm the authenticity of the deposit slips and to police investigation department. However, the matter had not been resolved as at the time of completion of the audit, and there may be loss of county revenue through fraudulent pay-in slips that could not be traced to the bank account.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. During the period, we had granted a waiver on penalties and interest on land rates. And Mr. Chairman, allow me to also add the response to what Senator Ongeri had asked, whether we had given a waiver. We gave a waiver, but not on the principal amount. We gave a waiver on the interest rates, on the interest on the penalties on land arrears. Some unscrupulous individuals took advantage of the busy period and presented fake deposit slips totaling to 2,988,323. This was treated as a fraud, and the case was referred to the DCIO Eldred for investigation with a view of prosecuting the culprits. The case is ongoing in Eldred. Affected rate accounts were reversed, and currently the county has access to e-statements in all revenue accounts where all deposit slips are therefore receipted.
Okay, so there's a process ongoing in court, and if we can confirm that that is the case, then we can maybe just in this, after adoption of this report, ask for an update on the status of the matters in court. We don't have control over that. Members, we can proceed to the next issue.
Yes.
Senator Linturi.
Yes. Chair, the governor confirms that they indeed give a waiver. Probably it would be of interest for him to explain to us the process and what informed the waiver of the interest. The process, most specifically, the process that was taken to grant the waiver.
Governor?
Mr. Chairman, what informed the waiver of the rates were the old debts that we've seen had been passed in the books for so many years previously, and to encourage payment of rates and try and bring everything to up to date, we discussed this. This matter was taken to the County Executive Committee for discussion, and it was approved at the CC meeting that we grant a waiver. However, Mr. Chairman, we did not waive the principal amounts in consideration of giving that waiver, because we also didn't want to demotivate those who are paying the rates, and that is why we said all the rate payers must pay at least the principal amount required.
Professor?
I must really thank the executive for taking a timely action, because if you didn't do that, you would have never discovered this fraud. But now I think we'll be deep into the deep losses of the county revenue, and I think that's a good step. And at this stage, I think we must commend that action. And that's the way it should be always.
Professor, you do recall that in Kisii County, the county that you represent, there was a similar case of fraud. And it was so unfortunate that the person that was being pursued opted to commit suicide. And so some of these things happen, and I think the right approach is the legal process that the county has taken.
Senator Linturi?
Chair, I raised that, but that question specifically to bring to the attention of the governor on the provisions of Article 210 of the Constitution, which is that there is no waiver, no tax that may be waived or may be varied without legislation. So in the event that the fees or the interest that was being waived and accumulated for a period of time, and we found it necessary to waive interest to collect the principal, then the National Assembly, the County Assembly of UASIN GISHU should have been involved to provide for legislation under which that should be done. And that's what I really wanted to know, whether the County Assembly has provided legislation on how tax can be waived or interest can be waived on any particular matter. And again, you also find that when that is done, there is a requirement under the Constitution that you must put it on display and make a public announcement that we've done the MBCD, these are the people we have waived for these reasons. So was the County Assembly involved?
Maybe before I respond, just to add to that, is Section 159 of the PFM Act that expands that further. Powers of County Executive Committee member for finance to waive or vary tax, fees, or charges. Subsection 1C says that such waiver or variation needs to be authorized by an act of parliament or county legislation. That's PFM 159. So now you can respond to the question posed by Senator Linturi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There was, this process was a consultation of the Budget and Appropriation Committee of the County Assembly in the quest to make sure that the local revenue we are going to be estimating in our budgets are actually real. Because some of the debts we are giving in our books, using it as a basis of how much revenue we expect to collect this year, was what was giving us a deficit at the end of the financial year and incapacitating us not to pay our suppliers. So after the discussion with the Budget and Appropriation Committee of the County Assembly, the County Executive Committee member of Finance then submitted a paper for approval at the County Executive Committee meeting.
Senator Linturi, a paper was submitted. Does it meet the threshold?
No, Mr. Chair, you know now, that is where now the question lies. Whether a proposed paper even before a County Assembly meets the threshold or can be construed to mean legislation. Legislation is a process of making law. And the process of making law has certain stages. And it can never be law until the County Assembly has passed it and you have signed. Then you as a governor sign that to acknowledge it as law, to give authority to the CEC Finance now to waive the interest.
Governor?
Mr. Chairman, it was not a law, so we didn't sign.
Then that means, Chair, because the Constitution and Article 210, the PFM Act 159, subsection 904, is clear there was a breach in the manner in which the levies were waived, or the interest was waived because it did not comply to the law. But,
yes.
Chair, I think you may have very good intentions. You may do things with very clear mind and good ideas, but in one way or another find yourself in complete contravention of what the law provides. I think, Mr. Governor, UASIN GISHU, probably there comes a time where now you really need to look at the empowerment of your county attorney office, your legal office within the county assembly, within the government, which is supposed to advise either the county assembly and the county government, so that whenever you want to take certain decisions, that you have a legal opinion, so that people are able, you are supposed to be advised legally whatever you want, whether whatever you want to do conforms with the various legislations that have been passed by either county assembly or the national government, so that there's no conflict.
And this conversation, Governor, I see this
situation you are in. But this conversation is also to help the County Assembly Public Accounts Committee that in consideration of some of these issues, you must apply the law as the benchmark. It also challenges the Senate to fast track the county attorney's bill. Because, Governor, you cannot know all the rules and requirements in the PFM Act and regulations, but you need an advisor. Actually, all your officers must be well-versed with legislation in their various domains. So I think as Senate, we'll need to fast track that bill so that we have county attorneys provided for in the law and appointed, and then some of the burden of compliance then shifts away from the governor to the county attorneys. But I want Senator Ledama Olekina just to read something that he has pointed out to me.
Chair, thanks. I think it's also important, Governor, to realize that when the law is there are certain requirements. And I don't know how we're going to deal with this. We'll wait for the direction of the chair. But I just want to re-emphasize on what Senator Linturi has said, is that in Article 210 of the Constitution, if you look at subsection 3, it says, no law may exclude or authorize the exclusion of a state officer from payment of a tax by reason of the officer held by the state officer or the nature of the work of the state officer. And then on top of that, it says that in the event that there is a waiver, each waiver and the reason for it shall be reported to the Auditor General. So, and I don't know whether this was in your domain at that particular time, that requirement. And whether it was, did you report it to the Auditor General?
Governor?
Senator, apparently it looks like we were not seized of that matter of the requirement to report to the Auditor General.
Well, professional negligence, what does it look like on the part of the persons who are stewards of financial matters in the county? This smells like professional negligence. I think the PFM Act and regulations says that all officers must take responsibility to know and to internalize the requirements of the law. That is professional negligence. If Professor Ongeri left a Caesar in the stomach of a patient, he will no longer be a doctor. This smells like that kind of negligence. Senator, Professor...
Chair, are you asking me what is the consequence?
What is the consequence of that, please?
It's the likelihood that the practicing doctor may lose his license.
May lose his license, yeah.
Yes, and that's a very heavy indictment.
And on the part of a CPA?
Well, it suffers the same consequences. A profession is a profession, and there are rules and regulations that you must abide by.
Senator Linturi?
I wanted to say is that there's an independent capacity in the county assemblies. And where I see, times when I sit as the Vice Chair of Legal Affairs and coming up with this legislation, we are trying to really see how we can bring order and build the capacity in those areas. But it's important to let the governor know, just like and first stated, that one or in his position where he sits, there is a principle of vicarious liability. Vicarious liability principle is where you're beyond the level for the actions of your colleagues, or as long as whatever liability is incurred is within the course of employment. When I go back to the case that the governor's had in the High Court, challenging the appearance before this committee, the arguments that took place was that they have chief officers and they have the CEOs, and for that matter, whatever mistakes that are made cannot be taken to really, they cannot be taken to be part of it. So, and Governor, I don't want to insinuate in any way. I know we all not be aware of what the law provides for, But I think it's the high time you consider the county attorney empowering that office so that any legislation that is proposed or anything must comply with Article 10, must also not come with the proposals that have a probability of being in contravention to any written legislation of the Constitution. That's how to move forward, Chair. But he must be reliable. He can't run away from responsibility. That's the other end of the job.
Okay, I think we've thrashed the governor quite a bit.
It's not thrashing myself, it's maybe consolation because
okay.
Is one, I'm a worried person because this is 2014, 2015. Since then, what has been happening? The other one is to underscore the importance of us not being morticians, because if we had done what we have done today, probably if something has happened in the subsequent years, that would not have happened because the county government and the governor would have been enlightened on some of the issues that have come forward today. Thank you.
Professor, further consolation or thrashing?
Yes, in fact, Governor, you're lucky that your first shot when you took the floor was building the capacity. And I think by now it's quite clear that there is need to beef up the capacity in the accounts department so that these issues don't pass unnoticed. I think you started off very well, and considering this was 13-14, a lot of people were groping with the implementation of the new constitution and the enabling legislation, which as of today is not in place vis-a-vis the question of waivers and or borrowing of one way or the other, anchored in the legislation. But I think from today, I think we understand each other, that going forward and in the subsequent audits, we don't expect to see these queries again arising at this moment. So in mitigation, I think you started off well by saying you have no capacity. And I believe, I don't want to conclude for you, that one of the areas you need to beef up your capacities in the accounts department.
I was just wondering loudly whether the finance bill or the finance act at the county could be one of those legislations that could capture the waivers. But it is a discussion you can have internally so that whenever you're doing a waiver, let it be supported by legislation. And finally, do you have a county attorney, despite the fact that we have not passed the law?
Yes, we now have one.
Came on board at the start or
No.
came on board later?
About a year, 2016.
2016. Senator Ledamo Lekina was just checking on the status of the county attorney's bill. I believe it is in the committee. Yes. It is in the committee stage. And we can make a commitment. And Senator Ledamo Lekina, you sit in the Senate Business Committee. This is a piece of legislation that must be fast-tracked to provide counties with the technical capacity on legal matters. So we can proceed to issue number 4.6, direct spending of revenue.
Chair, 4.6, direct spending of revenue. The county executive of UASIN GISHU collected local revenue of Kenya shillings 800,096,541 in the financial year 2014-2015, out of which Kenya shillings 133,660,460 was not banked in the county revenue fund account, but was spent directly contrary to the requirement of the PFM Act 2012. The expenditure was therefore incurred without the authority of the control of budget, and as a result, the county executive was in breach of the law.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Let me allow my CC for Finance to respond to that matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, a total of 133,660,460 was used as an internal borrowing from cash office. This was interdepartmental borrowing between revenue and expenditure, section to meet operations as a result of delays in exchequer releases. This amount was transferred directly to the revenue account in KCP when the exchequer actually was received. And it has been annexed in Annexure 9 to show the statement how the funds after receiving the exchequer release from control of budget was moved subsequently to KCP account which is a revenue collection account. Thank you, Chairman.
Auditor General, have you looked at the Annex 9, and does it satisfy your query?
Thank you, Chair. We tried to understand Annex 9, but it was not communicating, so we didn't draw any conclusion from it.
So this 133 million was from collections. It was from collections.
Chair, thank you. Remember then at that time, county government used to collect cash from daily collections, and whenever there was a shortfall in meeting normal operation expenditure unit would do a written requisition from the chief officer to approve that the cash can be spent at the collection point, but then thereafter, when the actual money is received from the exchequer, the same funds will be moved back to the revenue account, then it will be swifted back to the CRF account.
You know, the way you run Patel and Sons is different from the way you run a county government. Members,
yeah, just out of curiosity,
Senator Ledama Lakin,
do you have a revenue collector, or do you do it on your own?
Chair, we do have a Department of Revenue Collection and Finance.
I think
Senator,
maybe Senator Ledama was asking whether it's automated.
No, let me just...
Oh, the designated collector and receiver.
Yeah, because I want to understand why this 133 million was not banked. You know, because if it is collected, it ought to be banked. Because if I can understand, if I'm reading the query from the auditor correctly, it says 133 million was not banked in the county revenue fund account. So the explanation you're giving that that money was banked later, I don't really understand it. Because, and I would understand it if you had a revenue collector outside from your department who then remits the money to you later.
Even if you had, the money must first go to the county revenue fund. All government collections must go to the consolidated fund. Professor, then Senator Linturi.
This internal borrowing, was it in a lump sum or was it in batches? If that is so, in refund, which is referred to as Annex 9 here, was it again in bulk or in bits? Because when you look at this Annex 9 here, it's 226,000 in one occasion, 2 million one occasion, 18 million one occasion. So you don't see where it's being applied, how it's being refunded, to what account?
Senator Linturi?
Yeah, you know, the question here is from the Auditor General is 133 million shillings was not banked, right? And the CEC Finance admits that yes, the money was borrowed internally from the cash office to meet expenditure within the county because the exchequer was late. Now, it is an offense not to bank money in the county revenue fund. There is no shortcut about it, Chair. But the CEC Finance says when we received our exchequer, we paid back. Now, the question is, when you are paying back, the money was paid back into a KCMB account. A KCMB account is owned either within Eldoret, an account in KCB Bank. The CRIF account, if I'm not wrong, is held at the Central Bank. I think you need to correct me if I make a mistake. So paying money to a KCB account by way of trying to refund or to money that should have been collected and banked to the CRIF account at the Central Bank is not enough proof, Chair, that indeed that money can actually be accounted for because it has not gotten itself to where it is supposed to be so that the Auditor General or the Controller of Budget can authorize release. So this is the question I want answered to understand really whether this money was taken back to central bank so that any other subsequent withdraw and the necessary authorities.
Yeah, just respond to that very specifically.
Thank you very much, Chairman. To respond to Senator Linturi, Kenya Commercial Bank is one of the banks that collects our revenue, and that is the bank that where all customers who are making deposits, for those who make deposits direct to the bank, and whatever we collect, we're supposed to deposit there, and Kenya Commercial Bank then sweeps that to central bank, just for purposes of making sure there is proper reconciliation on our one account revenue that we are using for collection. And we have documents to show that that money was taken. On the question Senator Onkeri was asking, whether this was 133 million lump sum money, I would say no. These are funds that is only, the internal borrowing was only happening when there was no funds in the county. So we never collected 133 million once and then spent at source. It's a situation where sometimes funds would be required, 200,000, and there were no funds, and that's the time the money was borrowed internally by the department.
And the deposit back to KCB, was it done lump sum or it was also in installments?
It was on installment because the refunds were as when the funds we receive, we refund what was already been borrowed.
Senator Omanga, then Senator
clarification. Yes. Because this 133 million was not banked. And the governor is saying this money, they didn't borrow from cash office once. So that means, because this 2014-2015, meaning the whole year, because I can imagine 133 million is for maybe 2 weeks or a week or something, so, or a month. So does it mean money was kept in cash office in the county, waiting to pay whatever they were paying before the requisition, they get their money?
Senator Olekina, then Governor can respond to both issues.
Chair, thanks. Governor, I think this is a very easy question. It deals only with one aspect, banked or not banked. And if you're saying you bank this money, do you have any evidence to show that money being banked? And if you do, have you tabled it here? Because the question of internal borrowing is not raised here by the auditor. The auditor was very specific, direct spending of revenue. So for us to be able to dispense of that issue, we've got to now get your information where you said, we have banked this money.
Governor?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in our annex, we have attached a bank statement.
The bank statement can account for the 133, and I hope that chronologically we are also able to see the period within this took place in the bank statement. Auditor General, have you looked at that bank statement?
Thank you, Chair. We tried to understand the bank statements, but we could not. And I can say that the regulations also require that money collected, once it's banked in the local collection account, it should be transferred to central bank, so that it's from the central bank when that money should be spent.
Governor, I see in mitigation, I think you brought in as a result of delays in exchequer releases. And as Senate, we will now ask ourselves, the Treasury or exchequer is making counties to do creative things that are borderline illegal, like what we have done here. You are saying your frustration is delays in exchequer releases. The county must run. So you must find a creative way of running the county. Unfortunately, you found a creative but illegal way of doing it. And the Auditor General has just cited the relevant law. Senator Olekina?
No, Chairman, I think... Allow me, please, before Kina, bring this to the attention of the committee and the governor himself, because Chairman, unfortunately, we may have all the best intentions, but we may do things that are not right, and then you cannot run away from the liabilities that arise out of those actions by dint of what the law provides. So the Regulation 63 of the Finance Management Act, subsection 63, subsection 4, and I will read. And before I read, I will also want a clarification from the governor of the CC whether they have appointed a receiver or a collector of revenue, and ask him now to listen to what Regulation 63 subsection 4 says, and is couched in mandatory terms. No option, no discussion. There are no leeways. And I read it says, all public monies collected by a receiver of revenue or collector of revenue or collected and retained by a county government entity shall be paid into the designated bank accounts of the county government and shall not be used by any public officer in any manner between the time of their receipt and payment into the bank, except as provided by law. So there is no way you can collect money in the cash office and use it. You're only supposed to take the money in the bank. When the money is in the bank and can only be used now by a system provided by law, which is probably the CRF account getting authority from the auditor of controller on budget as such. But there is no room for you to borrow from your revenue collector or your cash office, spend, and then come to later. It is not acceptable.
You know, that summarizes it. Senator Ledama Olekina.
I think, Chair and Governor, here we are seeing a possible loss of revenue. Because if we go by the law, strictly by the law, if you look at PFM Act, the one that Senator Linturi was talking about, the regulations, and also look at now the Act itself, 158, where it is very, very clear. You're supposed to provide quarterly reports on this money. If you're saying that that money has been banked, where is the quarterly report? It is also very clear that it says any other public officer, other than the receiver of the revenue or collector of the revenue for the county government, who collects revenue for the government, shall no later than 3 days after receiving it, deliver the revenue to a receiver or collector of the revenue of the county government. So if you're saying that it delayed in collecting the revenue, and you said that you deposited this money, where are the quarterly reports to show that? Because here, Chair, there is a possible loss of that money of over 133 million.
So Governor, just to, you have designated a receiver and a collector of revenue. Have you formally appointed persons or entities to play that role?
The Chairman, we have our staff collecting part of the revenue, but we also have our clients banking the money directly to our revenue collection accounts.
The requirement of the law is that you must designate, it could be the chief officer, it could be an internal staff, but must be designated as the receiver of revenue. Have we done that? If you look at the PFM regulations for county governments, it is provided for very clearly, and on what role the receiver of revenue plays. In fact, on revenue raising measures, all these things we've been talking about, it is a receiver of revenue who comes up with a strategy that is then adopted by the county. So have you designated someone to that role?
Yes, the Chief Officer of Finance is responsible for revenue, and we have a directorate headed by a director for revenue.
Is it designated or it is assumed? There's a reason why it is in the PFM regulations.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, is designated because it is by appointment.
Could we see a copy of the letter designating as per the law?
Yes, Chairman, but I'll request to be given time for an officer to collect it.
Just let your officers brief you on the requirements of that regulation. It will solve a lot of the problems that we are seeing here as far as the revenue collection is concerned. Even the issues of rates, doing it without legislation, the issues of all these things you're talking about on source revenue. It is that receiver who has been given the duty in the PFM Act and regulations. So make it very explicit.
And I think I just want to, Chair, if you may allow me, I really would like to refer the governor and his staff into Section 157 of the PFM Act. Because it may not be one person, it may be persons. So that means everyone who is collecting money on behalf of the UASIN GISHU County government, whether he's collecting money in a market, in a slaughterhouse, or whatever, has to be designated by the CC in charge of finance. So that can maybe help you be able to narrow that down. But if it is one person as well, or one entity, like other counties maybe have sourced out, like Isiolo has cattle, having been designated to collect their revenue, then there's a different arrangement made there, but it has to be under the law. So when you're providing us with that letter, just make sure that if the appointing authority, in that case the CC in charge of finance, it is very clear that that person has been designated as a revenue collector.
And let the letter not be dated today.
Mr. Chairman, I think, whether I don't know, we specifically recruited a director responsible for revenue. And that is the letter we have. And the duties are specified as those for revenue collection. I don't know whether that is the document that we should be submitting.
I would like you to look at PFM section 157 that says, in fact, it says very clearly, in writing, the county executive committee member for finance shall, in writing, designate persons to be responsible for collecting, receiving, and accounting for such county government revenue as a county executive committee member for finance may specify in their letters of designation. Our interest really is not to see a letter written, because a letter can be written and backdated. Our interest is just to bring this to your attention, that in the spirit of the Act, these issues of collection and receipt of revenue, the Act has tried to address it. And whoever has been designated to that role must also look at 157 subsection 2 that says a receiver of county government revenue is responsible to the CEC for finance for ensuring that the revenue for which the receiver is responsible is collected or recovered and is accounted for. So we said we come here to learn from each other. And I think you need to emphasize this point. Then all your problems around revenue collection will be addressed. But again, it puts some responsibility in the hands of the CC member for finance, because he's the one to do the designation. So please follow up and ensure that is done. Now, members, I'd like us to move on. This direct spending of revenue, we are not satisfied with the mitigations that have been brought before us. We'll make some broad policy decisions, but specifically, we feel that there's need for some sanctions on the officers who were responsible for this illegal loaning within the county. Members, I would urge that we move to number 6, 4.7, 5.0. We can deal with the written response. Let us look at issue number 6 on personnel costs.
Chair, paragraph 6, personnel costs. The statement of receipts and payments reflects compensation of employees' expenditure of Kenya shillings 2,160,333,350, which is about 40% of the total revenue of Kenya shillings 5,344,799,431. The personnel costs of 40% to the total revenue exceeds the recommended percentage of 35% stipulated in section 25, subsection 1B of the Public Finance Management County Government Regulations 2015. The county government therefore contravened the law regarding personnel costs.
Governor?
Mr. Chairman, that is true. That the budget figure stands at 2.49565,242, above the recommended that 5% of the budget stipulated in the PFM Act 2012 regulation. The trend has continued. It is unlikely to change because during devolution, we received all the staff of former councils together with staff of other devolved functions. But the costing of functions and where the law says resources follow function, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman, that never happened. If we were given the resources to follow the functions that we were given, plus the personnel, we could not be in the situation we are in. We are in a situation where national government was in a hurry to offload staff to counties, but they have not been in a hurry to let the resources those staff were using follow that function. And a very good guess, Mr. Chairman, is in health and agriculture. You appreciate agriculture is 95% involved. If you look at the budget of Ministry of Agriculture at the national government before devolution and after devolution, they are almost receiving an equal amount of resources they used to receive before devolution. And yet the function is devolved. So the resources never follow the function. There has been continuous devolving of the functions that were needed for counties. As late as recently, we received the function of the national libraries. But the devolution is just on the staff. We are not seeing the additional resources of those functions accompanying the staff that are being devolved. I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman, there is nothing much we can do. The other challenge we have is that besides that high staff cost we are seeing, we shall have to continue also recruiting technical staff where it is required. Because we also inherited staff, both fairly technical and fairly so many low cadre staff. And I'll tell you, for example, in this county, we have more than 400 staff that we inherited from the former councils, earning salaries, a driver earning salary equivalent to that of a director, but it's a standard 8. The salaries have never been harmonized. The staff we inherited from the council, you will find a driver earning equivalent to what the director is earning. And we cannot retrench. We cannot pay them less than what they were earning because they say now the salary is personal to the holder. And we need technical staff now to perform the technical function in some of the departments. That is the challenge we are in.
A fairly helpless submission on that particular matter. Senator Ledamo Lekina, then Senator Linturi.
Chair, that notwithstanding what the governor said, I'm actually at a loss here because, Governor, I would have expected you to say, instead of saying that will continue, I would have expected you to say we are going to carry out a skills audit. Because what is the point of you retaining somebody who is not able to perform? Then you retain other people and you retain other people. You have to be clever at this, Governor. You have to figure out a way of either early retirement. You have to maybe, because you cannot continue incurring this expense. And it worries me that you're saying this will continue, this will not stop, that you'll continue recruiting. I think you need to put a moratorium in hiring completely until you carry out a proper skills audit. That is issue number one. And the reason why we're telling you this is because right now we are at a crisis in this country. The debt is almost choking us. And then now, on top of that, for us as a Senate to defend you and to make sure that we defend the money that is coming to you, the one that is now being proposed to be reduced by 9.8 billion, you also have to help us here because you cannot have people. If that is true, is what you're saying, you have a driver who is earning an equivalent of a director, and is a Class A dropout. That is really a misuse of public funds. And I don't think there's anything that stops you from realigning those existing resources to be able to better you.
Chairman, allow me to just make one response to what the Senator said. One of the things that we have asked the Senate to intervene is on this issue of pension. If we were in control of our pension, we would initiate negotiation of staff on voluntary retirement, on how to get exits. But the National Treasury, for heaven's sake, wants to give me the staff. I make a pension contribution, and Rotich goes to sit with the pension in Nairobi, and I have no direct control, and he expects me to go ahead and control or find a way of having an exit of this stuff. And remember, Chairman, we have the CAPS report that we are looking at it together with the national government. And the Ministry of Public Service Management and the national government and the Public Service Commission, together with the county governments, we are supposed to finalize that process. It's a process that has dragged for years. And I will tell you candidly, Chairman, it's a question of people deciding to make a bold decision of saying, counties, you have your pension, you have to reduce your workforce, you have to have your wage bill, and not more than 35%. These are the options that are available. Go and do your discussions with your staff. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, the reason why we're having a challenge also in managing this wage bill is we have collective bargaining agreements being signed by ministries in the national government with the unions. And in the middle of the financial year, you are slapped with an agreement of a salary increase of 300 million, plus arrears. Really. It becomes very difficult from where I sit to put in place measures. And one of the interventions we shall be seeing from the Senate is all collective bargaining agreements should be county-specific. Because the staff in Elgeyo Marakwet or Homa Bay have no relationship with the staff in my county. If a county feels they have sufficient resources and they want to remunerate their staff, they go into some collective bargaining agreements, that. But because of standardization of public service to allow for movement of staff across, there is need for that. But I think there needs to be a better way of negotiating. Otherwise, we are going to have a problem of overpaying in public service and minimizing the resources that go to direct development or to the citizens of this county and this country.
Senator Linturi?
Chair, I think when we promulgated this constitution and we had the first elections under the new constitution, the agreement was between the people of Kenya and the governors that to be elected, not only Wamandago, but including President Uhuru Kenyatta, because the book or the constitution is the agreement between the governors and the governed in this country, was that all properties belonging to the defunct county authorities were vested to the new county governments, whether they took all the assets, they took all liabilities. After listening to a number of governors, the excuse that we've had to this question has been that we inherited very many people from the local authorities. Just as you invest in assets, and the law gave you these members of staff, Mr. Chairman, the best thing that should have happened was them to look at the skills that the members of staff earned then that could have been tapped to take over the new devolved structure, especially in the counties. Now, I don't know whether these people went further and recruited other people, not taking cognizance of the fact that there were other competent members of staff within the counties, and hence the ballooning of the wage bill in the counties, or really what happened. Because even under the OND constitution, when the local authorities used to exist, salaries were not being paid directly from the national government. I served a member of parliament in the OND constitution, and I interacted closely with the county councils and the municipal councils. So really, there is nothing much as far as I'm concerned that has changed. But you know, we've gotten to a situation whereby, other than the governors blaming the members of staff, probably it would be important for you to take decisions that are far-reaching consequences and the times require the choices. Yes, you have this problem. And because you have budgets that you are making every one time, if, for example, you say you want to retrench, factor it into your budget, you want to lay off a number of people, organize how to pay them, and then reduce the burden, because it has very serious long-term effects. Now, let us not be just the farmer that blames the Njembe for not having an opportunity or for not doing what he or she is supposed to. I require you to bring exculpatory evidence before this committee to demonstrate how or why you shouldn't be blamed for. It's not an opinion I'm forming. That is the extent I don't want to go. For not really having worked or compliant with the regulations, with the law, as a county government, as far as issues to do with the finances are concerned, because honestly, Chair, from what I've learned from the Auditor General, from the answers coming from the governor, is a case where somebody has been taken to court, the prosecutor has rendered the charges, and the accused person is saying, yes, I'm guilty. So we only remain for a situation where we have to do or to make a sentence.
So then we need to proceed and sentence the governor, now that he has accepted that he's guilty as charged. But Senator Kibiru.
You know, you have not given us a health break, so I need to tell the governor probably one of the things you do, it's a percentage of the revenue collected. So if he increases the revenue, the percent goes down to 35. It's as simple as that. Increase the revenue.
Yeah. I think that's a perspective that we also need to interrogate. But Governor, before you respond, the county pension schemes bill is before the Senate, and I think it has gone to the stage of second reading. I hear you when you cite that, when you link it to even redundancies, because you'll need to figure out how to pay the benefits. And it has taken quite some time. Number two, yesterday our Committee on Devolution had a meeting with the County Assembly Service Board, and I think they also met the County Public Service Board. I think the conversation must have touched on some of these issues. So there are many initiatives ongoing. Thirdly, you might need to tell us right now, because this was 2014-2015, what is the percentage? Has it gone up or has it worsened?
Mr. Chairman, it has gone up. It is now 47%.
It's now 47%.
And this was occasioned by the collective agreement signed by the nurses that saw our increase, our wage bill increase, actually about 300 million.
Okay, so it's increasing despite growth in revenue, but it's still increasing, and yet it's a percentage of revenue. Okay, fine. So what would be your final words before you are sentenced on this particular matter?
Mr. Chairman, my final word would be, one, if that pension bill can be fast-tracked. Because one of the things you cannot do is ask the staff to leave service, and then their pension, even what they contributed, you have no certainty as to when it will be paid. I think once we have the control of how those funds can be available, it makes it very easy for us now to begin negotiating. Because I have staff who are above 50. Some of them have even indicated that they are willing to leave. But now, my problem is our pension is not available. When they say we are now leaving, we need to avail that pension at the time they are leaving. Number two, I would want to tell Senator Kirinyaga that I think as a county what we do is we really want to be honest. Where people want to hide, whether they are really meeting that 35% or not, people have an option of overestimating the revenues they are going to collect. So when you look at the budget, it looks like this balance. But at the end of the year, that is why some other counties have ended up with pending bills of billions of money.
Just final word on that, Senator Olekino.
I think, Governor, it would be important for you to carry out an audit of your skills, because then by doing that, you can prepare towards, as we are going ahead and making sure that we help you in the Senate in regards to the pension bill. What I'm seeing, even in your current staff here, there's a lack of capacity, you know? So I think you may need to carry out that, because in some other counties, we know this, and maybe this is also the same here in UASIN GISHU, is that you've got ghost workers, you know? So if you've not carried out an audit skills, if you haven't carried out an audit of all the skills that you have, then there's no way you're going to solve this problem.
It's a shared concern across all counties, and we cannot do this one, even though you say we sign CBAs per county, but solving this problem, we must first take a national view. CAPS, that thing called CAPS, even as Senate, we don't know where it has reached. And maybe our devolution committee must now find out, is CAPS still on or it died? Because as far as we are concerned, it must have died when the promoter left office. But also we must discuss this at IBEC and COG and advise us on how you'd wish Senate to push for it. Now, if it was a sentence, it would have been suspended because there are many other mitigations. Because of time, we are going to consider your written response on quite a number of the issues. We are going to compare also with the County Assembly report. There are several issues on procurement, which I note that it's an issue of records not having been provided. If the records have been subsequently provided, we want to ask the Auditor General just to confirm to us as we write the report that you've been satisfied. But in the few minutes remaining, Auditor General, I want to go to maybe on 28, Governor, could you just confirm that you have concluded the process of asset and liability identification and verification, and that you have submitted your report to IGRTC?
Mr. Chairman, we have submitted our report to IGRTC. The only two contentious issues we have is the payments we are supposed to make to NSSF and the payments that were meant for pensions of staff to Lab Trust. Because it's an issue of records and the acts that were enforced during that time. That is a matter we are yet to settle with NSSF.
It's, we know that the IGRTC process is work in progress, because after the deadline of submission, we just wanted to confirm that you met the deadline. I think the last deadline was 31st of August.
We've met the deadline, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we can now follow up with IGRTC through the subsequent steps. Fine. Auditor General, I'd like you to take us to issue number 31.1, and then we will come back to a few issues if time permits.
Chair, paragraph 31, Kipkabus Water Project, 31.1, that is under that, disputed ownership of the project. The Ministry of Water, Environment, Energy and Natural Resources undertook to construct Kipkabus Water Project at Jebaon, Elgeyo Marakwet County. However, there is no signed agreement between UASIN GISHU County and Elgeyo Marakwet County on this project.
Order, Senator Linturi. We are on 31.1.
The auditor's report, page 10,
the issue number 31.1.
31.1. Let me start again. Kipkabu's water project, disputed ownership of the project. The Ministry of Water, Environment, Energy and Natural Resources undertook to construct Kipkabu's water project at Chepaon, Elgeyo Marakwet County. However, there is no signed agreement between UASIN GISHU County and Elgeyo Marakwet County on this project, which is in another county. This has resulted to a dispute between these two counties that has not been resolved.
Could you just go to 31.2, then we can have the responses all at once.
31.2, which is related to the first one, delayed completion of the project. The county competitively awarded the contract for the water project to an engineering company that has so far been paid 25 million, Kenya shillings 25,787,972 of the contract price of Kenya shillings 39,461,041. The project was to be completed within 6 months after signing of the contract on 16th June 2014. However, the project had not been completed by 30th June 2015. The Inspection and Acceptance Committee for the project had on 26th March 2015 certified the level of completion as follows. As shown, as a consequence, the unresolved dispute between the two counties may delay the commissioning of the project, thus service delivery, and the project is likely to stall given due to the dispute.
Governor, you could respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Allow me to ask the CC responsible for water to respond.
Chair, as it has been said, the Kipkabo's water project was initiated in my department, and we have done quite a lot in the mitigating the issues, and the best option when we looked at what we wanted to do in giving water to the people around Kipkabus, we saw Cheboin Dam in Elgeyo Marakwet as the best option. After the design had been done, a meeting was held at the dam site where the benefits to community neighboring the dam was agreed upon. The dam being located in Kenya Forest Service land required that the county government liaise with the KFS for concession. Number 3, environmental impact assessment was undertaken where the input from all the stakeholders, including the community neighboring the dam and the county government of Elgeyo Marakwet, were incorporated. A draft memorandum of understanding was agreed upon, and it was mutually agreed that the contractor could commence with the works.
Point order, CC. What you're reading, we don't have. Yes. Are you reading a written statement, or you are explaining? Because we would wish to be seized of those details that you have presented. What I'm seeing in the governor's written response is one paragraph.
Yes, I will provide.
Could you table that? Do
Yes.
you have copies? Can you
Yes,
bring it before members so that we can follow it?
Yes, I will provide the elaborated
We want it
version.
now because we want to deal with this matter now. Do you have copies?
Yes, we have copies.
Distribute them to members. Now, remember, the governor swore an oath, and the governor subsequently tabled the report before us. So I wish that what we are looking at was captured in the governor's report, rather than coming as a separate leaf. As far as our records are concerned, we will be guided by what the governor wrote. But I think it's important to understand the background. So, CEC, could you start again? Members, you have a copy?
Chair, as a matter of procedure, if we have to adopt or to be guided by what the CEC has provided, then it must be signed, because it doesn't have any issues.
Yeah, Professor Gary? You haven't gotten a copy? And when you get your copy, there will be no signature on it. So now, I think...
Mr. Chairman, what my CC is reading is part of the annexures we have in our documents.
It's part of the annexures?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay, then that's fine. If it's part of the annexures that were tabled, then that's okay. What we could have done was to first read the formal response and then refer to the annexure. I think that's where the confusion is coming from. So, as per the governor's response, read it and then take us now to the annexures.
Okay, Chair. Initially, the dispute of land was not anticipated as the project was for a good cause. The project is at the boundary of Elgeyo Marakwet and was in GISHU County. The counties have held various meetings. The underlying issues which caused the delay have been resolved, and the project is currently at 98% completion. The project is only awaiting commissioning. Currently, the county is taking precautions in any projects undertaken near the boundary that is having public participation involving both parties.
Mr. Chairman, allow me also to add that besides this project being geographically under Elgeyo Marakwet County, it is actually in the national government land. And our first point of contact in negotiation for the use of that dam was with the Kenya Forestry Service, which is the owner of the land that the dam sits. And the afterthought or the dispute that we entered into Elgeyo Marakwet County was not anticipated because we had already done consultation, and even in the design of the project, it was factored in that water will be supplied. A water tank was going to be constructed for a school in Elgeyo Marakwet County as part of that project. The reason why the project stalled is after implementation, then the residents, again through the MCA, made additional demands that were not part of the contract.
Okay, members, as you comment, remember Nairobi, Murang'a are having issues on water. So Senator Ledamo Lekina, then Professor Ngeri.
Chair, Governor, I think you should come and build a dam in Narok for us. It's very generous of you. But I'm just curious. I'm looking at the annexures that you've provided because from your initial response, it led a lot to be desired. Because they say the issue is being addressed by counties since the beneficiaries of the project are residents of Elgeyo Marakwet and UASIN GISHU County. I think, can you explain to us how much of this project is benefiting the residents of Elgeyo Marakwet versus the residents of UASIN GISHU? So that's number one. That's question number one. Question number two, in the documents that you've provided for us to look at, there's something that looks like a memorandum of understanding. It says the county government of Elgeyo Marakwet and the county government of UASIN GISHU and the upstream community in the Chebon Dam site of Kibiemit Ward. But this document that you provided is not signed. What exactly does it mean? Because it's right here as part of your documents that you provided under oath. The only other documents that I can see here are really documents from UASIN GISHU County. Is there anything from Elgeyo Marakwet that will be able to make us understand? Is there anything from the national government, from the documents, these documents? I can see one letter from, KFS. But given that it's in two counties, what is it that you did? Because I would have thought that both counties would have paid for this project.
Mr. Chairman, the percentage Elgeyo Marakwet is benefiting from this project is 7%, because one of the things we consider when we are doing water provision is the cost of providing that water. That water can only flow by gravity towards GISHU County. It is unlikely that Elgeyo Marakwet can use. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, we never anticipated this dispute because Elgeyo Marakwet also has done a project of water for Iten and Tambaj that is actually in GISHU County. But it's because we cannot benefit from that water on gravity. That water can only flow the other direction. And there was no dispute because that project is also in a KFS, is also in the forest, also in KFS. This other project is also in KFS. And Mr. Chairman, we never anticipated because where this dam is located, if we are to strictly follow the law on boundaries and what the Constitution said when counties was being established, where that parcel of land lies is actually in GISHU County. And the land administration of that, all 80% of that ward is actually being administered here in GISHU County. So we never anticipated, and there was an agreement. There was a consensus initially. When we ran into this problem, we now developed an MOU, and we had a draft MOU that we sent to Elgeyo Marakwet County. We've not signed the MOU because we've not gotten the response from Elgeyo Marakwet County, but we have a draft MOU that we had sent.
Chair,
Kibiru, Governor amejenga nyumba kwa shamba ya wenyewe.
I wouldn't have a problem with that because from the explanation he has given, this is a very good intention. And secondly, the governor has really explained something that is obvious. Water flows through gravity. It means that water has to flow in a certain direction. So having given that kind of an explanation, I think as a committee, we need to appreciate that those are things that must be done. What we need now to do probably is to ask the governor to date the negotiations with Elgeyo Marakwet so that they can resolve this issue and the dam is commissioned.
Professor.
Yes, Chair, I've had the singular honor and opportunity to visit the dam when I was the Minister for Local Authority. And I would have thought that that project was under the World Bank or ADB. Was it the same one?
It was a project that was supposed to have been done.
Yes.
But it was never done.
It was never done. Now, it's in that forest, and the school you're talking about was a small little primary school, very rugged. You had not put any investment in that school. And I remember saying that since you are drawing water from another county council, not county government, that time was county council, that you should be able to provide the water. And if my recollection goes right, this was many years ago, you had already done the fencing. So I don't know where this fencing is coming. Was that a second fencing, a third fencing, or what is it? Because the project is viable. I can, on your behalf as a committee, say it's one of the best and the cleanest water that you can get from that dam. It's just crystal clear because it's just flowing through the forest. My only worry was if they destroyed the forest, and then that would have been a major cause of worry. Now that the dispute has nothing to do with the cost, has nothing to do with the impropriety of the project, it's everything to do with the dispute. I think what we can do as a committee, short of visiting the place, is to recommend that they come to the table through the intergovernmental relations committees and what have you, and resolve this matter. Because economically it's beneficial to both parties. In as long as you provide the water for the surrounding communities to be able to drink that water from that source. Now, secondly, have you done that road because it was treacherous to the water point?
Before the governor. Senator Linturi, do you want to come in or you want the governor to respond first?
Let me only advise, Chair, because of the pragmatism about the project in terms of water provision to the people was in GISHU. And considering that the UASIN GISHU County is investing in a piece of land that does not belong to them, that now that there is that in dispute and I am not seized of the contents of the MOU, probably is to suggest that the two counties and the national government or KFS, the interested parties generally, in this, to kindly and look at the MOU because of taking care of the individual interests of the parties involved for the future. Because today you may have a governor who can be able to sit down with the other governor. In the future, there may be someone else who might just come in and makes life very complicated or other things coming. So it's important to have an MOU that is able to stand the test of time to take care of the interests of all the counties. If there are any disputes, how they will be solved, so that nobody comes one day and says, I will close this water, I will not give you water, and then the whole thing becomes a mess.
I'll refer us all to PFM Act, Section 128, on joint, is this the regulation or this is a regulation? No, this is the Act. Oh, this is the regulation. Talks of joint infrastructure investments. That's Regulation 128. And as you refer to that, in the spirit of what we came to do here in UASIN GISHU County, I acknowledge the chair of the Public Accounts Committee for UASIN GISHU is present. Probably, I would want to give you an opportunity to find out, because you wrote a report on this. Did your committee visit this project? And what has been the position of the committee and of the County Assembly of UASIN GISHU on this?
Thank you, Chair. I think we had written a report. You have a copy that you'll see. At that time, we actually called the executive, we interrogated them, but the documents that they are providing here was not there. And the Auditor General we were with and the committee decided, because it was not well, actually, it was not well put before the committee for satisfaction. That matter you will see in the report. We left it to stand as it was.
This project was in the annual development plan, I believe. Must have been in the CIDP, must have been in the ADP, must have been in the budget, must have been in appropriations. How did it progress through the assembly?
Chair, as the query was brought, we tackled the query as it was brought by the Auditor General. So we didn't take an initiative of going on the ground to see, but there was a budget for the same. Thank you.
I raise that because we all have a role. When the governor is planning, the assembly approves the plans. In that approval, the assembly guides the governor and his executive. And if this was a project that was approved by the County Assembly of UASIN GISHU, then from a practical perspective, you know, the way Professor Ngeri is speaking and other members are speaking, they sympathize that the intention seems fairly okay. But county boundary disputes, I mean, there's Nandi versus Kisumu. There's Vihiga versus Kisumu. There's Machakos and Meru Isiolo. There are people fighting over Konza. We must be very careful in the manner in which we proceed. So just to read for you what joint infrastructure investments are all about, Regulation 128 sub 2 says that a joint infrastructure investment shall be, and the word used there, solemnized. It's like a marriage, shall be solemnized through an intergovernmental agreement which shall be filed with the Office of the Attorney General and the Department of Justice and shall specify the county governments involved, etc., etc. And a joint infrastructure investment means any capital project initiated and undertaken as a joint venture between two or more county governments. Now, it did not start as a joint venture, seemingly. It was initiated by UASIN GISHU. But along the way, you've tried to bring Elgeyo Marakwet on board through the draft MOU. But please go back and be guided by those procedures in the regulations so that you regularize and you solemnize that venture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. But the Senate intervention we shall also be seeking is there can only be a certain number of sources of water in a county. I am not a proponent of blocking water from going to another county, because if we start that debate in this country of saying the water in my county cannot flow, then I can tell you a place like Webuye and Bungoma will not get water because the water in Webuye and Bungoma comes from Uasin Gishu County. I think water as a natural resource and a very important resource for this country. And I would really want to say that we should minimize the issue of county MOUs. I think we need a national policy and framework. Because as Senator said, if two governors who are not agreeing come into force, then you can imagine what will happen in this town if the water in Jabara is to be closed. I mean, this town will be literally shut. So we shall be seeking the Senate intervention in terms of legislation on the national framework of use of water.
We had the Natural Resources Management Bill, and I know yesterday in our plenary discussion, that issue came up when we are talking about broadly petroleum and several and the mines, Karebe gold mine. And I know an issue will be coming to us from Murang'a, because all the water we consume in Nairobi comes from Murang'a. Kwale told us that their water comes from Mombasa, but Mombasa's water comes from Kilifi. So there are lots of interdependencies, and it requires a broad interpretation. Now, this really is not a matter that we can say that go and remove the investments from that. This requires some joint, as we said, a joint approach. So be guided by the regulations. County Assembly, please provide the governor with good guidance also, so that it has not asijenge nyumba kabla jue hiyo shamba ni ya nani, because someone can take an issue with that. But the issues of gravity, the issues of natural resources, I think we can leave. Professor?
Yeah, where is this water? Is registered under what? Is it the UASIN GISHU resource asset? Is that where the dispute is coming from, or how is it registered?
Mr. Chairman, the water is not registered because it is it's under Kenya Forest Service land. We are not claiming ownership. We only want to draw the water. And what informed us actually working on that dam is the studies that was done, and I'm happy Senator Mungeri is here to confirm that actually that water could supply 2 wards in Uasin Gishu County on gravity. And already the rest of the project has been done. There was a small pipe that was coming. This project is actually serving the same community. In fact, the MCA who incited the residents against the project after it started, he lives in Elgeyo Marakwet County, but the parents live in Uasin Gishu. The parents were among the people who are going to benefit from the water. So I want to agree with you, Chairman. This is a matter we are going to take up with the Governor for Elgeyo Marakwet, and we commit to make sure that the project is completed and the residents are able to use the water.
Because of time and because we will be in plenary at 2:30, I will ask members to do closing remarks, but I want to, the Chair, Public Accounts, UASIN GISHU.
Thank you, Chair. Now that maybe we are completing the session, the meeting for the morning section, I would just wish to request the Senate, because you are here, to draw a line whereby, in case of any audit general queries, what's the boundary of the county assemblies and where do the Senate take over to continue? Because we as the committee in the counties, we do much, but at the end of the day, it's not seen because the Senate again starts. So it is good if you can have a collaboration so that the report from the county government, if it's not relevant, it's not well done, then you can be in a good position to tune. It will be a continuous issue that we should not be conflicting, because last time in the other dispensation, we used to conflict. We have to, it is Honorable Senator Halwade was there as the chair. We had to respond, ask him, please give also the county pick pack committees to do their work before you take over and conclude. So please, I would wish to have your direction on the same. Thank you.
That is relevant. We held a meeting with the chairs of public accounts committees and clerks in Mombasa. It was about 8 months ago, and that was a subject of discussion. That has also been the subject of the litigation, the Oparanya case against the Senate, and the court made some determinations. We intend to hold another meeting with the public accounts committees. We are still looking for people who can finance the meeting so that we sit together and start drawing those lines. The Auditor General has also committed that in the current year audit, this time round they will do 2 reports. One, I think, will be financial, and the other one, what did you call it yesterday? You'll do 3? What are the 3 reports?
There will be a report on the internal controls, then there will be a report on financial audits, and then there will be a report on compliance.
So we can agree on which report comes to the county assembly and which report goes to the Senate. But you must have also observed that as a Senate, we were not going to look at every single issue, but we have picked issues with policy and legislative implications, because we are the ones who write laws up there. It's an ongoing conversation. It's a valid point. We can only draw the line if we come together. Senate cannot draw it alone. We must do it jointly. So members, to allow preparation of this chamber for the plenary, I'd like members to do quick closing remarks. Maybe we can limit it to a minute or 2, and then we can give further directions.
I think a very useful interface. By now, I think the UASIN GISHU county government appreciates the fact that the budgeting process, the resource flow from the exchequer is based on the last audited account of 2013-2014. 2012? No, 2013-2014. And that was overall budgeting global figure of 1 trillion. And that's where we based even the current budget allocations to county governments. If we are up to date with our audit reports, you will appreciate if we were to be in the audit year of 2017-2018, the implications in terms of revenue sharing are enormous. So see this work as one that drives us towards exacting more resources from the national government to county governments. It should not be seen as a punishment to the county executive for the type of queries that we are raising, but it should be seen as an effort in reaching the maximum benefits for counties to get more revenue based on the last audited account. Because the last audited account will be in trillions and not in billions. I rest my case.
Yeah, Chairman, let me say that this is, to me, it's a very good meeting where we have had an opportunity to interact and share views and ideas. We didn't come here on a fault-finding mission. I am sure out of the interaction that we've had, we've all been able to learn from one another. We've all been able to know that once we are bestowed with certain responsibility, that responsibility or that power must be exercised for the greater interest of the people, must be exercised within what the law provides for, and I think, Chairman, this is the way to move forward. This is the way to progress the country. And I am really saying I'm very grateful for the kind of reception we've had here. I'm also very grateful because last night I got a diary and a pen from Washington County. But I want to state that but there is something I want to say, that when I don't know whether it was the speaker who said when a question arises out of the procurement of the diary, we should not raise a question. Indeed, that made me think, because the diary was so good, and a hand cover of wound is a diary that I've not seen. So probably only the comes to ask whether it was necessary to have a diary with wound and cover or not, and whether the cost was really necessary. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
You are required to declare all gifts, so please declare to
the
gifts
that are supposed to be declared, I think, are the ones that above a certain figure. I mean, I don't know whether 10,000 or beyond.
A wooden diary could
but
be.
If it's beyond 10,000, I will be required and allowed to declare. But I hope it is not, because if it is, then I'll be in an awkward position.
Senator Kibiru.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine is to say that I'm impressed with the governor's enthusiasm and the focus of what is it that he wants for the people of UASIN GISHU, and the many things that he has done. The only thing that I would praise that this was 2014. We are looking at 2014, 2015. As we move forward, we need to see a serious cleanup. This is a learning curve. Let's agree it was a learning curve, but 6 years down the line, Governor, we expect to see something different in totality. So I hope next time when we meet, some of the issues like the missing documents, some audit queries that can be resolved faster, they will be resolved. Otherwise, thank you so much for hosting us, and we wish you well.
Senator Omanga.
Maybe I'd want to start by thanking the governor for hosting us. And thank you, being the first county. We are really impressed. What I would want to tell the governor as a Senate, we are friends to the governors. When you sit in the Council of Governors, you tell your colleagues, we are friends, we are not enemies. We should look at each other like friends and be able to go through the challenges together, because there are so many challenges facing the county government, from empowerment, the staff, and all that what we've been talking about. So if we work together as a Council of Governors and the Senate, then we'll be able to deal with these kind of challenges. Then I think that's it.
Thank you, Senator Ledamo Lekino.
Thank you, Chair. Governor, I'm not impressed. I would not be saying something that I'm not. I'm concerned about the 3 years subsequent advance opinion, which I think you need to act on them. I'm impressed with your desire and agility and dedication to service in terms of helping the people of UASIN GISHU achieve certain goals. I'm also impressed with your ability to raise local revenue. But one thing that I would like to encourage you is that this sitting has given you an opportunity for you to see where you have gaps. There is a serious capacity issue. And that capacity issue has got to be addressed. Because when the law is there, the PFM Act, the Public Audit Act, which the Constitution, those things have all got to be read together so that you can be able to ensure a fiduciary responsibility. And when you look at the issue of fiduciary responsibility, it falls down on you, your CCs of finance, and your entire cabinet. And I'm happy that you're here with them today. The other issue that I also would like to comment on, Chair, if you may allow me, is on the issue of the PAC in terms of the County Assembly. I've looked at your report, and I realize also there that there is a need for capacity building there, because there are issues that you cleared here and which actually violate the Constitution, violates all relevant laws, And I think there you need to see whether you need to build capacity in terms of your secretariat so that we can be able to really support the people of Uasin Gishu. And finally, as we are grappling with this issue of revenues, collecting local revenue, I committed that I will ensure that I bring up a motion to ensure that national government, because they have budgets, these budgets are allocated for them. So there's really no explanation as to why they cannot pay for their rates, yet they do have a budget. So I think when we really become diligent in terms of trying to close all our loopholes and trying to ensure that we collect all the local revenues, we will be able to live within our means. Otherwise, I thank you for your hospitality.
Thank you, Senators. Governor, you might have some remarks in closing.
Thank you very much, Chairman. On behalf of my team, let me say thank you very much for being afforded the opportunity to prosecute our issues concerning audit. One of the benefits that we shall have achieved through this session is a number of my staff who have never had a chance to appear before the Senate have had a chance to appear, and they have heard for themselves the various laws they're supposed to adhere to. So I believe going forward, Mr. Chairman, you will see more clean books from this county. Secondly, we still ask that the Auditor General gives us the opportunity to attach the interns to be trained. And I still insist that there are no better institutions to do capacity building other than national government agencies. If you are looking for a good auditor in this country, the only institution you can fetch one is the Kenya National Audit Office. And they cannot release. We have even tried looking for a director of audit from them. They cannot release. There are very few. And we need more. And I don't know why they cannot allow. We are the ones paying for the interns. I don't know whether the Kenao wants to enjoy coming and finding books that are not organized instead of helping us build capacity and coming and finding books that are orderly so that they deal with serious issues instead of small matters. And finally, Chairman, this sitting is so beneficial. I don't know whether within Senate regulation it allows so that when we have sessions for Public Accounts and Investment Committee, if these counties around here, if you could be bringing the sitting close to us, so that instead of the governor appearing with the CC Finance and the chief officer and one other officer, we get opportunity to also appear with other staff. We shall also be helping in the quest of capacity building. I don't think in the next audit, a county that will not have gotten a chance like what was in GISHU has gotten today will have the benefit of learning what we have learned as a whole county government here, both executive and county assembly. So we shall be requesting that if it is within the Senate regulation and the laws allow, if counties can be clustered that come from just a neighborhood so that they can all be appearing and at least afford that opportunity of learning, we shall really appreciate. And as a county, we want to thank you for this session. And before we close, Mr. Chairman, allow me to table the approval of the county assembly for the borrowing that we had asked that we submit before this session closes.
Please do. Proceed.
Mr. Chairman, allow me to table a report, the fifth report of the Committee of Budget and Appropriation, Committee of the County Assembly of Uasin Gishu, that was done on the 20th February 2014.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. We now want to bring this to a close. I want to also extend my appreciation to the county government of Uasin Gishu and the county assembly of Uasin Gishu, in whose house we are in today. We will make our recommendations, but our work is also cut out. Governor, we now know the bills to fast track. County boundaries bill, we must fast track it to deal with your keep caboose kind of scenario. The county attorney bill, the county pension scheme bill, the natural resources management bill, and also procedures and regulations on audit to address the issues raised by the chair of the Public Accounts Committee. And also we'll tell our Lands Committee to look into the issues of relationship between NLC and counties that is affecting you, And we'll also talk to our devolution committee on issues to do with caps and the process of identification of assets and liabilities. So the onus is not just on you. Even us, we are taking away some homework. For you, is just to ensure that your officers pay fidelity to the law. There is no shortcut, and that is a measure that we'll use at all times. We will, at our next meeting, we'll consider 2015-2016, because we believe that the significant issues raised by the Auditor General, we have discussed them, and others we shall rely on your written presentation that was tabled before us. We are keen on closing that loop. There's a huge backlog. If you are a new governor dealing with the accounts of an old governor, it becomes a little bit cumbersome. So we want to move as fast as possible. And finally, clustering, I think you've given us a very good idea. We've toyed with it, but when you mentioned it, it now made sense that we could, for example, come and set camp in Eldoret and have 4 or 5 counties appear before us. That way it's easier. And then we can go to Kisumu and have the Nyanza counties appear before us. We shall be doing more of that. There is value in Senate coming out, irrespective of the comments from demagogues who think that when we come out, we are just spending money. We have been working from 9 o'clock up to this time without a break. I think that's a message that the nation should know, that we didn't come on holiday, we came to work. With those remarks, I'll be compelled to close this.
Chairman, kindly,
Vice
please.
Chair?
Yeah, kindly, with your indulgence, allow me request you to allow the Office of the Auditor General to make some comment in view of the allegation that they are not probably releasing auditors when called upon, because I think it's necessary.
Do you have instructions to respond on that? And it must be within 1 minute, because the sergeant at arms have declared as disorderly.
Yes.
Yeah, because out of the normal practice, when an allegation has been made, the only right thing we can do is to give the accused person the right of reply.
The right to reply. Okay.
Thank you, Chair, for giving us this opportunity. We are actually very concerned about the remarks by the governor, and he has actually brought out an issue which I think should be considered by the Auditor General. But we also are aware that the Public Audit Act under Section 18, although if you read it right now, it says that the Auditor General can second auditors or his staff to the counties. But the ruling by the court in Justice Chacha Muita's case actually took out that advantage. And now the Auditor General cannot be able to second staff to the counties. But nonetheless, the Auditor General has been doing capacity building programs for counties. And I don't know whether the governor has been making a formal request. But if he makes a formal request, it will be considered. And we have been, the Auditor General has been capacity building the counties. Thank you very much.
As a liaison, please note that as one of the issues that we must address in our regular meetings with the Auditor General, because the request by Governor Mandago is a valid one. There being no other business, we adjourn. The committee shall meet tomorrow at 9 o'clock to consider the report for West Pokot County. Thank you.
Na umeona tumekaa kutoka 9.